Chapter 1640, Challenging the 7th Level. Chapter 1640, Challenging the 7th Level. When the abilities of a cultivator achieved a certain level, he would give off a certain amount of pressure. For example, a universe god would have the pressure at the level of a universe god. However, when someone made a breakthrough to real god, he would possess the god power. A person's god power was related to how strong his divine power was. At that moment, the invisible pressure that Jian Wushuang gave off was able to make Gu Jinyu, a stage 2 6-star ancient god, frightened. How powerful was his god power? Gu Jian, you have made a breakthrough? Gu Jinyu looked at Jian Wushuang, dumbfounded. Yes, I have just made a breakthrough. Jian Wushuang chuckled. However, even if you have made a breakthrough to become a 6-star ancient god, how can your god power be so powerful all of a sudden? Gu Jinyu frowned as he murmured, I shall make a move first. Jian Wushuang did not continue talking to Gu Jinyu, and he left quickly. Jian Wushuang continued to walk forward alone. As I have only just made a breakthrough, I am not too familiar with manipulating my god power, and it will be released from me if I am not careful. Jian Wushuang laughed. He was already doing his best to control his god power. However, if he wanted to control it perfectly, he would still require some time. In a split second, Jian Wushuang went to the palace that King Gui lived in and requested an audience with him. Within the lofty hall, as expected, he has made a breakthrough. King Guyu looked at Jian Wushuang in front of him. Your god power is really very powerful. King Gui, I wish to challenge the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower. Jian Wushuang said straight away. The 7th level? King Gui frowned. You have only just made a breakthrough. Wouldn't it be too early for you to challenge the 7th level now? King Gui knew that Jian Wushuang would definitely want to challenge the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower in the future. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang had only just made a breakthrough, and it was obvious that there was still room for his abilities to improve. Gu Jian, you should know that as your realm increases, the abilities of the opponents who you would come across in the Star Moon Tower will rise as well. King Gui looked over. Back then, you were only at the level of a 5-star ancient god. If you were to challenge the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower, you would come across a stage 3 6-star ancient god. Of course, it would be a 6-star ancient god who had just entered stage 3. However, now, you have made a breakthrough to 6-star ancient god. By challenging the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower as a 6-star ancient god, the opponent who you come across will definitely possess the fighting capabilities of a top stage 3 6-star ancient god. If you really want to gauge of such a person's abilities, in terms of the human being's sanctuaries, he should be someone who is extremely close to an expert of the real god ranking list. Are you sure that you currently have the confidence to face a person with such fighting capabilities? I am confident. Jian Wushuang nodded his head immediately. So confident. King Gui was surprised. He did not know about the great rise in abilities of Jian Wushuang when he made a breakthrough to real god. At that moment, Jian Wushuang absolutely had the confidence to have a head-on battle with a chaotic real god. Although he would be unable to clear the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower at such a level, not to forget, Jian Wushuang still had the secret skill of Star Palace. After 2,000 years, he could unleash his secret skill of Star Palace again. Moreover, the moment he unleashed it, his attack power would rise by 100 times. As such, he had absolute confidence that he could defeat the opponent that he would face in the 7th level. I have just made a breakthrough, and my abilities are in the eruption stage. Hence, what I need to do the most now is train under the aid of a great amount of resources, so that I can raise my abilities. As for the resources, the ancient god sanctuary does not have them. Jian Wushuang was very clear about that. At that moment, what he wanted to raise was his level of comprehension of the Heaven Way, as well as his own sword principles. However, the lineage of ancient gods seemed to have never comprehended the power of Heaven Way. As such, they naturally did not have the necessary resources. With that, Jian Wushuang decided to return to the human beings' sanctuaries. However, before he left, he had to get his hands on the moon picking skill, which was the last and most powerful secret skill of the ancient god clan. Gu Jian, you are an inverse cultivator who has also cleared the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven. Hence, I believe that you are definitely not an idiot who always believes that he is in the right. Now, let me ask you one last time. Are you sure that you want to challenge the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower now? King Gu Yi stared at Jian Wushuang with a grave expression. I am sure. Jian Wushuang nodded his head again. All right. When King Gu Yi waved his hands, an ancient, pitch-black tower floated out of his hands immediately. The tower floated out of the palace and appeared on the void above the ancient god palace. It then expanded quickly, and in just a short amount of time, it had become a 100-foot-tall tower. After that, its great amount of aura spread across the area immediately. Other than the ancient god palace, the vigorous aura of the Star Moon Tower also spread across each and every corner of the Gu King City immediately. Many ancient gods within the Gu King City were attracted over straight away. It's the Star Moon Tower. The Star Moon Tower has opened up again. The previous time, the super genius named Gu Jian opened up the Star Moon Tower, and he cleared the first 6 levels in one go. This time around, who has opened up the Star Moon Tower? Filled with doubts and excitement, countless ancient gods headed toward the ancient god palace. Many top experts of the ancient god palace also asked King Gu Yi about the matter. King Gu Yi replied straight away and said that Jian Wushuang wanted to challenge the 7th level. With that, the experts in the ancient god palace were completely shocked. In the vast void, a giant sacrificial altar floated up again, and it was filled with towering, vigorous auras. Swoosh, swoosh. All of a sudden, 2 figures appeared on the sacrificial altar. Upon seeing the approaching people, everyone on the sacrificial altar stood up immediately and greeted them. The approaching people were King Gu Yu, the current ruler of the Gu King City, as well as his brother King Gu Tong. At that moment, both of them were the people with the greatest authority in the Gu King City. When they received King Gu Yi's message and got to know that Jian Wushuang was about to challenge the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower, both of them came personally. On the ground, countless ancient gods were gathered together. All of them also knew that the person who wanted to challenge the Star Moon Tower was still Gu Jian, the person who created a miracle 2,000 years ago. I thought that someone else wanted to challenge the Star Moon Tower. However, I did not expect the person to actually be Lord Gu Jian, and he actually wants to challenge the 7th level. The 7th level, the highest level of the Star Moon Tower, is the 7th level. In just a short 2,000 years, I wonder if Lord Gu Jian will really be able to clear the 7th level. Everyone was either filled with excitement and discussing the matter. Everyone was looking forward to it. When Jian Wushuang cleared the first 6 levels of the Star Moon Tower in one go previously, he had caused an uproar in the whole ancient god sanctuary. At that moment, if he were able to clear the 7th level, he would definitely become a legend. From then on, no matter how many years passed, he would still be talked about by the experts of the ancient god clan enthusiastically. However, the premise was that he must be able to clear the 7th level. Jian Wushuang, King Gu Tong, who was sitting on one of the 2 thrones at the center of the sacrificial altar, looked down with his proud eyes, and asked, "Are you really confident? Please don't send yourself to death." "I am confident." Jian Wushuang nodded his head. "All right then. Please go ahead." King Gu Tong waved his hands. Jian Wushuang drew a light breath. After that, under the observance of countless eyes around him, he moved toward the Star Moon Tower. In the blink of an eye, he entered the Star Moon Tower. Chapter 1641, The Last Secret Skill. Chapter 1641, The Last Secret Skill. The 7th level was the last level of the Star Moon Tower. After Jian Wushuang appeared in a vast wasteland, he saw his opponent right away. His opponent had already revealed her ancient god body. It was a gold-armored ancient god. However, what was different was that its body was obviously slightly more emaciated, and it was not as big as other ancient gods. "Lady Gumei, it's you?" Jian Wushuang was surprised. Gumei was a 7-star ancient god. The 7th level of the Star Moon Tower was actually personally guarded by her. "Gu Jian, you are very outstanding and I admire your talents. However, even though I admire your talents, I cannot break the rules of the ancient god palace. Hence, when we fight later on, I will not show you any mercy," Gumei said. "Lady Gumei, please do your best." Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently. He could tell that Gumei was merely an ancient god shadow. Thus, the abilities that she could unleash would be comparable to a real god's on the real god ranking list, and she was totally within the level of people whom he could deal with. Buzz, rippling sword essence, appeared from Jian Wushuang's body. In the next moment, Jian Wushuang made his move. Within the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower, Jian Wushuang and Gumei's ancient god were fighting an intense battle against each other. Atop the floating sacrificial altar in the sky outside the Star Moon Tower. I wonder if Jian Wushuang will be able to clear the 7th level. This Jian Wushuang is not stupid. Since he has the guts to challenge the 7th level, he definitely has absolute confidence. But after all, the 7th level is guarded by Lady Gumei herself. A number of top experts were having various discussions. As for Jian Wushuang, not long after he entered the Star Moon Tower, Gumei, who was atop the sacrificial altar and had closed her eyes all the while, opened her eyes. "Lady Gumei, how was it? Is Gu Jian dead or alive?" The surrounding ancient gods looked at Gumei in succession. "For the result, wouldn't all of you be able to find out by looking?" Gumei chuckled. Everyone looked toward the Star Moon Tower at once. All of a sudden, a dim light appeared from the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower. He had cleared it. He actually succeeded. The top experts above the sacrificial altar, as well as the ancient gods below who came to observe, opened their eyes big at that very moment. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang's body had already come out from the Star Moon Tower, and he came before the sacrificial altar. "Lady Gumei, thank you for letting me win." Jian Wushuang gave Gumei a bow. "I did not expect you to possess that kind of peculiar secret skill." Gumei looked at Jian Wushuang with a baffled expression. Jian Wushuang smiled and did not say much. "Xian, bring him to the ancient god palace to inherit the last secret skill," King Guyu instructed personally. "Understood." Xian nodded his head and brought Jian Wushuang to the place of inheritance. After Jian Wushuang had left, "Gumei, please tell us what exactly happened in the 7th level." King Guyu looked toward Gumei. "I am also very curious." King Gu Tong also wore an interested expression. King Guyu, King Gu Tong, and everyone else present. "Firstly, I have to say that my ancient god Shadow did not hold back in the 7th level of the Star Moon Tower, and it displayed abilities that were in accordance with the standards of the Star Moon Tower," Gumei said. After Jian Wushuang became a 6-star ancient god, his abilities were indeed very powerful, and he could rival a stage 3 6-star ancient god. However, when he was fighting an intense battle against my ancient god Shadow, he was completely suppressed. At the start, it was extremely one-sided, and I even thought that there was no doubt that he would die. However, in the blink of an eye, his abilities skyrocketed abruptly. If I'm not wrong, he has unleashed a very special secret skill which allows his power to achieve a completely new level, which might even be above mine. Moreover, after unleashing his secret skill, neither did he waste any time on me nor compete with me in terms of close-quarters combat skills. Instead, he only unleashed unique skills and secret skills to compete with me in terms of power. Even though it was purely a head-on clash of attacks, I was not his opponent, and I was defeated. That's it. The top experts present all looked at one another. Among them, a red-haired, tall old man said, 2,000 years ago when he challenged the 6th level of the Star Moon Tower, which was guarded by me, he was not my opponent at the start as well. However, all of a sudden, his abilities skyrocketed, and the power he unleashed was way greater than mine. Thus, I was defeated. It seems like he had used that secret skill as well. As soon as his words left his mouth, many experts present understood. This little kid actually possesses that kind of secret skill. No wonder he is so confident. King Gu laughed apathetically. Ancient God Palace. Under the guidance of Xian, Jian Wushuang came in front of the 3 black ancient attics again. Out of the 3 attics, Jian Wushuang had already gone into 2 of them and inherited the thunder attracting skill, as well the star destruction skill. At that very moment, he was only left with the final attic. You may go in now. The rules are the same. You only have 10 years' time, Xian said. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Without hesitation, he stepped into the palace. When he entered the palace, the first thing he saw was still the 1,000,000-foot-tall ancient god Shadow, which was at the end of his line of vision. The moon-picking skill is the most powerful and mysterious skill of the ancient god clan's 3 secret skills. Hence, I wonder how impressive this secret skill is. Filled with a bit of excitement, Jian Wushuang sat down with his legs crossed immediately. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes. In no time, memories of inheritance flowed into him. Jian Wushuang also did his very best to absorb the memories of inheritance. However, all of a sudden, Jian Wushuang's expression changed fiercely. The moon-picking skill is actually a space-time type secret skill. Jian Wushuang was surprised. It should be known that what he had comprehended was the space-time doctrine. Hence, his ability to detect the power of space-time was naturally high. As he absorbed the memories of inheritance, he could feel clearly that the moon-picking skill involved power of space-time. The moon-picking skill was an extremely advanced and frightening space-time type secret skill. Hence, it could be said to be a remarkable ability. However, it was unusual that such a secret skill did not require one to comprehend the power of space-time at all. Instead, one only required a great amount of ancient god power to use it. How exquisite! As Jian Wushuang muttered to himself, his consciousness could not help but enter a state of comprehension. As he absorbed the memories of inheritance, he also used them to learn the secret skill, and from there, he comprehended the space-time doctrine as well. After all, such an advanced space-time secret skill would involve an extremely huge amount of power of space-time. Moreover, these were all things that Jian Wushuang could comprehend. Time passed by. In a flash, 10 years had passed. The inheritance of the moon-picking skill had come to an end. As for Jian Wushuang, not only did he learn the complete method to use the moon-picking skill, his level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine had also increased greatly. If I'm not wrong, my comprehension of the space-time doctrine has already achieved the standards needed to clear the 4th level of the Doctrine Palace. Jian Wushuang giggled. Chapter 1642, Returning to Thunderbolt Island. Chapter 1642, Returning to Thunderbolt Island. Originally, Jian Wushuang had only wanted to inherit the moon-picking skill fully. However, during the process of inheriting it, his level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine had also increased greatly, and it could be said to be an unexpected gain. I have already obtained the ancient god clan's 4 unique skills and 3 secret skills. Moreover, I have also made a breakthrough to real God. Thus, I have achieved all my objectives for coming to the ancient god's sanctuary, and it's about time for me to leave. Jian Wushuang stood up as he laughed. Although he possessed the bloodline of an ancient god and a human being at the same time, he had been living in human territories ever since he was young. Hence, he naturally had a greater sense of belonging in human territories. For his trip to the ancient god sanctuary, it was merely for the unique skills and secret skills. Since he had achieved his objectives, he naturally had to leave. After walking out of the Palace of Inheritance, Jian Wushuang bid farewell to King Gutong, King Guyu, and the rest of the people he was familiar with. After finding out that Jian Wushuang was about to leave, King Gutong, King Guyu, and the rest of the people who he was familiar with were not surprised. In no time, Jian Wushuang settled everything that he needed to settle in the lineage of ancient gods. After that, he left the ancient god sanctuary and headed to the human territories. Hall Master Yuan, I have already left the ancient god sanctuary. Also, I have made a breakthrough to real God. Jian Wushuang informed Hall Master Yuan of what had happened. You made a breakthrough already? So quickly? Hall Master Yuan was surprised at first. After that, he became delighted. That's great. Jian Wushuang, now, do you plan to return to the lineage of Star or go to the Thunderbolt Island? I should be going to the Thunderbolt Island, Jian Wushuang said. As he had just made a breakthrough, his abilities were in the eruption stage. Thus, he would benefit greatly if he were to go to the Thunderbolt Island to train at this stage. Since that's the case, please be careful during your journey, Hall Master Yuan warned. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. A huge amount of time was required to return to the Thunderbolt Island from the ancient God Island. However, the good thing was that after coming out of the ancient God sanctuary, no one had their eyes on him. As such, his journey was quite a smooth one. Thunderbolt Island, the Sanctuary Alliance's base. After returning to the Thunderbolt Island, Jian Wushuang went to the Fairy Palace immediately. Old Snake. Jian Wushuang was standing in front of a black-skinned old man who was wearing a simple hemp garment. The black-skinned old man was called Old Snake, the person in charge of the Fairy Palace. Jian Wushuang, I have not seen you for some time. Oh, you have made a breakthrough to real God. Old Snake was looking at Jian Wushuang, and he could tell with a glance that Jian Wushuang had made a breakthrough to real God. I am lucky to have made a breakthrough. Jian Wushuang laughed. An inverse cultivator at the level of a real God. Although you have just made a breakthrough, from the looks of it, the Sanctuary Alliance will have an additional top expert who is able to compete against the Almighties soon. Old Snake chuckled. This time around, you wish to enter the Fairy Palace, right? Reincarnation Fairy Palace and Space-Time Fairy Palace. How many years do you wish to comprehend inside either of them for? There is still 40 years of training time remaining in each of the 2 tokens of the Fairy Palace's legacy that I have, so I shall use up all of them, Jian Wushuang said. In the past, he would go to the Fairy Palace to comprehend every few years, and he would comprehend for 10 years every time. However, at that moment, He had just made a breakthrough in his realm. Hence, the longer he could stay in the fairy palace to comprehend, the better it would be. The old snake waved his hands toward Jian Wushuang's 2 tokens of the fairy palace's legacy. You may go in. Jian Wushuang entered the reincarnation fairy palace first. In a vast, starlit sky, there was a total of 27 picture scrolls, which were filled with secrets. Among the 27 picture scrolls, Jian Wushuang had finished comprehending the 10th picture scroll previously. However, when he was merely a universe god back then, his abilities had achieved the maximum possible level, and he was unable to raise them any further. Thus, his level of comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei had naturally stagnated. As such, he could only stop comprehending. However, at that very moment, it was different. In the realm of real gods, there were no limits to the abilities one could have. For example, if a void real god were extremely talented and also had great opportunities, his comprehension of the Heaven Way could absolutely achieve the standards to clear the 5th level or even the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace. Of course, there would not be any normal void real god who could achieve that stage. After all, if his comprehension of the Heaven Way had already achieved such a stage, he would have been able to make a breakthrough to eternal real God a long time ago. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang started to comprehend immediately. As Jian Wushuang comprehended, he realized that after making a breakthrough to real God, his ability to sense the power of Heaven Way had risen greatly. When he was only a universe god back then, with the aid of the 27 picture scrolls in the Reincarnation Fairy Palace, as well as the wonderful guidance from the Fairy Palace, his comprehension speed was already extremely shocking. At that moment, he had become a real god. Thus, his comprehension speed had become many times faster as compared to before. It's too fast. This comprehension speed is too fast. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and he was extremely delighted. With such a shocking comprehension speed, in just 2 years' time, Jian Wushuang comprehended the 11th picture scroll completely. After that, he used another 7 years' time to fully comprehend the 12th picture scroll. After comprehending the 12th picture scroll fully, it meant that Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had achieved the standards needed to clear the 4th level of the Doctrine Palace. Moreover, he was still left with 31 years of time. Continue. Jian Wushuang suppressed his happiness and continued to comprehend. However, the power of Heaven Way would become more complicated the more one comprehended it. As such, it would naturally become more difficult to comprehend. It was still all right for the first 12 picture scrolls. However, when Jian Wushuang reached the 13th picture scroll, his comprehension speed was obviously slower. In the blink of an eye, 40 years had passed, and Jian Wushuang could only leave the Reincarnation Fairy Palace. During the 40 years of the 27 picture scrolls in the Reincarnation Fairy Palace, I fully comprehended the 13th picture scroll, and I'm even close to 90% of the 14th picture scroll. This is already considered not too bad. Jian Wushuang was satisfied. After all, if he were to rely on his own abilities to train, it would be unknown as to how many years it would take for him to achieve such a level in his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. However, the reincarnation doctrine served as his shortcut, and he only spent a short 40 years. Next, it's time for the Space-Time Fairy Palace. While wearing a smile, Jian Wushuang entered the Space-Time Fairy Palace immediately. Similarly, he could comprehend for 40 years in the Space-Time Fairy Palace. Moreover, his comprehension of the space-time doctrine was at a higher level than the reincarnation doctrine, and it could already clear the 4th level of the Doctrine Palace a long time ago. For the 40 years, Jian Wushuang comprehended thoroughly. After 40 years of the 27 picture scrolls in the Space-Time Fairy Palace, he had fully comprehended the first 14 picture scrolls, and he was also about to be done with the 15th picture scroll. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more, and I will be able to comprehend the 15th picture scroll fully. When Jian Wushuang walked out of the Space-Time Fairy Palace, he was a bit dissatisfied. He felt that if he were to stay in the space-time doctrine for another short period of time, maybe about 4 to 5 years, he would be able to comprehend the 15th picture scroll fully. It should be known that as long as he comprehended the 15th picture scroll fully, he would be able to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. By clearing the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace, he would be able to obtain the right to stay in Thunderbolt Island permanently. Moreover, this was something that many chaotic real gods were unable to achieve. In addition, there would also be a very huge meaning in Jian Wushuang clearing the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace using his space-time doctrine. Chapter 1643, just a little bit more. Chapter 1643, just a little bit more. At its highest level, I can unleash thousands upon thousands of shadows when I use my martial art motion, Flowing Light Phantom. Moreover, there is a very high requirement in terms of the level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine in order to achieve such a level. To achieve such a level, the minimum requirement is to be able to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. In other words, as long as I can comprehend the 15th picture scroll in the Space-Time Fairy Palace completely, I can unleash the power of Flowing Light Phantom when it is at its highest possible realm. By then, my ability to stay alive will rise exponentially. Jian Wushuang was clenching both his fists tightly. The creator of the secret skill, Flowing Light Phantom, is an extremely powerful chaotic real god. In spite of that, the chaotic real god's level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine was only at the level that was enough to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. However, during his generation, when he used his martial art motion, he was recognized as the number 1 among the real gods in terms of martial art motion. From this, it could be seen how impressive his martial art motion was. Thus, if Jian Wushuang's level of comprehension were to achieve that level where he was able to unleash the Flowing Light Phantom's power at its final stage, his martial art motion still might not be recognized as the number 1 among real gods. However, he would rank at least 10th among the real gods. With that, not only would his abilities rise greatly, most importantly, his ability to stay alive would be greater as well. It was a pity that after comprehending in the Space-Time Fairy Palace for 40 years, he was still a very small step away from comprehending the 15th picture scroll fully. No matter what, I have to be able to unleash the power of the final stage of the Flowing Light Phantom secret skill. Hence, I have to think of a way to enter the Space-Time Fairy Palace again to train for a period of time. As for the way, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly. There was still a long time before the Sanctuary Alliance would give out the token of the Fairy Palace's legacy again. Moreover, Jian Wushuang definitely could not afford to wait. It was also impossible for the lineage of Star to help him get another token of the Fairy Palace's legacy. Since that was the case, he could only rely on himself. With his abilities, there was only one way for him to obtain comprehension time in the Fairy Palace: betting on a match. Thunderbolt Island, fighting space. When Jian Wushuang came to the fighting space, the 2 experts who were fighting an intense battle had just completed their battle. Real God, Xian. Thank you for letting me win. The voice of an old man with fluttering white hair resounded across the area. You are merely lucky. After giving a cold hum, Xian left straight away. As for Jian Wushuang, he stepped into the fighting space immediately. The old man with fluttering white hair saw the arrival of Jian Wushuang. After that, his expression changed, and he laughed. "Jian Wushuang, could it be that you wish to duel with me as well? I have come to bet on a match." Jian Wushuang came in front of the old man, with fluttering white hair. "What do you wish to bet?" the old man with fluttering white hair asked. "I still have more than 1,000 years of training time in the Thunderbolt Island. Hence, I will use my 1,000 years of training time, as well as 100 doctrine gems, as my stakes. As for what I want, it is 10 years of training time in the Fairy Palace," Jian Wushuang said. As soon as his words left his mouth, the old man with fluttering white hair was shocked. 1,000 years of training time in the Thunderbolt Island was considered nothing. As long as one was an eternal real god, he would be able to train in the Thunderbolt Island for 3,000 years every 100,000 years. Thus, the training time in the Thunderbolt Island was not considered very precious. However, 100 doctrine gems were worth quite a lot. After all, by adding all the treasures and belongings of a normal eternal real god, they only amounted to about 10 to 20 doctrine gems. Under normal circumstances, 100 doctrine gems could represent all the treasures and belongings of a top eternal real god. As Jian Wushuang had killed tens of real gods in one go in the burning demon region back then, and he had obtained many treasures. By adding real god Shurju's treasures and belongings on top of that, he could fork out 100 doctrine gems. However, that was the best that he could do. Your stakes are very attractive. However, it's a pity that I do not even have a token of the Fairy Palace's legacy and hence training time in the Fairy Palace. Therefore, I am unable to give you what you want. The old man with fluttering white hair waved his hands and was about to leave. Access web novel. Live if you like watching manga, comics. Jian Wushuang did not stop him. Instead, his eyes looked around the surrounding, and he said heartily, "Everyone present here, if any one of you is able to fork out 10 years of training time in the Fairy Palace, please step forward." After talking, Jian Wushuang stayed within the fighting space and closed his eyes. It was obvious that he planned to wait for someone to bet a match with him. The stakes that he had proposed were indeed attractive, and he believed that a number of people would be interested. As expected, after a number of real gods in the fighting space heard Jian Wushuang's words, they became restless. 100 doctrine gems. This Jian Wushuang is really rich and arrogant. Of course, he is the apple of the lineage of stars. What a pity. What he wants is training time in the Fairy Palace. Although there are many experts in the Thunderbolt Island, there are not many people with a token of the Fairy Palace's legacy. At the very least, I do not have it. A number of real gods felt that it was a pity. Although they were interested in Jian Wushuang's stakes and were confident that they possessed the abilities to defeat Jian Wushuang, they did not possess the item that Jian Wushuang wanted. However, although they did not have it, they informed some experts who possessed training time in the Fairy Palace at once. In the Thunderbolt Island, there were special secret patterns carved on the roof of an exquisite attic. At that very moment, there was a purple-armored, handsome man sitting down with his legs crossed over there. The handsome man was real god Tianming of the Four-Symbol Mansion. Real god Tianming's expression changed, and he opened his eyes. Jian Wushuang is betting on a match. The stakes are 1,000 years of training time in the Thunderbolt Island, as well as 100 doctrine gems, and he only wants 10 years of training time in the Fairy Palace. He offered 100 doctrine gems right away. This Jian Wushuang is really liberal with his wealth. Real god Tianming was muttering to himself. At the next moment, he got up and headed to the fighting space. As soon as he arrived at the wrestling ring that the fighting space was at, real god Tianming saw many other real gods who had arrived as well. There were many real gods, and they amounted to close to 100. Moreover, among those real gods, there were quite a number of them who real god Tianming recognized or were familiar with. Moreover, there were even a few genius experts who possessed the token of the fairy palace's legacy among them. This battle of Jian Wushuang has actually attracted so many people. Real god Tianming raised his eyebrows. However, he calmed down in no time. He knew that Jian Wushuang was not betting on a match with a specific person. Instead, he stood at the fighting space and declared that he would fight with anyone who could fork out 10 years of training time in the fairy palace. This was challenging the huge number of real gods in the Thunderbolt Island. In addition, Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator, and he was already extremely special to begin with. As such, when the news spread, it naturally attracted many experts. Chenyu, real god Tianming, spoke. Tianming, you have come as well. A void real god turned his head over. How has it been? Is there anyone who has fought with Jian Wushuang? Real god Tianming questioned. Not at the moment. Real god Chenyu shook his head. Jian Wushuang wants training time in the fairy palace. However, there are not many people who have the token of the fairy palace's legacy among the people present. Although I have a token of the fairy palace's legacy, I heard that Jian Wushuang has defeated you before. Chapter 1644, Real God Xian Feng. Chapter 1644, Real God Xian Feng. He has indeed defeated me before. Real God Tianming admitted right away. There you have it. Since you are also not his opponent, if I were to bet a match with him, wouldn't I be making myself embarrassed? Moreover, I do not have much training time left in the fairy palace. Real God Chen, you forced a smile. After that, he asked immediately, for you to come again. Now, could it be that you wish to have a battle with Jian Wushuang again? Real God Tianming shook his head. Jian Wushuang's level of comprehension of the power of Heavenway is extremely high. Although I have improved during the past 2,000 years, he must have improved a lot as well. Hence, I am not confident that I can defeat him. Let us observe the situation first. Yes, you're right. Real God Chenyu nodded his head. At that moment, swoosh, a figure entered the fighting space, and this attracted the attention of many experts in the wrestling ring. It's real God Xian Feng. Chenyu was shocked. It's him. Real God Tianming's eyes squinted. Most of the people in the Thunderbolt Island were eternal real gods. Although there were also a few void real gods, there were very few of them. Among the void real gods on the Thunderbolt Island, real god Tianming was considered one of the top gods. However, there were also void real gods who were stronger than him, and one of them was naturally the Monster King. The Monster King of the Soaring Heaven King Palace had been recognized as the #1 among the void real gods. Thus, real god Tianming's abilities were naturally incomparable to the Monster King's. Apart from the Monster King, the only other void real god in Thunderbolt Island who had made him extremely fearful was real god Xian Feng. Within the fighting space, real god Xian Feng had already appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. 1,000 years of training time in the Thunderbolt Island, as well as 100 doctrine gems. Real god Xian Feng was looking at Jian Wushuang. That's right, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. All right, I have 10 years of training time in the fairy palace. Let's get started. Real god Xian Feng had a cold expression, and his hands were already holding his purple saber. As you wish, Jian Wushuang laughed, and the Blood Mountain sword had already appeared in his hands. After that, swoosh, Jian Wushuang's body moved straight away. He did not use his martial art motion. Instead, he only relied on his own speed, as well his comprehension of the space-time doctrine. However, The speed that he unleashed in an instant caused many real gods outside the fighting space to open their eyes wide. This speed, real god Feng was shocked as well. The fourth level. His comprehension of the space-time doctrine has definitely achieved the standard needed to clear the fourth level. Real god Feng's expression turned ugly at once. He knew that Jian Wushuang had defeated real god Tianming before 2,000 years ago. Moreover, with Jian Wushuang's talents, his abilities would definitely be stronger after 2,000 years. However, he did not expect Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the space-time doctrine to be able to achieve the standard needed to clear the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace in just a short 2,000 years. After all, it would be more difficult to comprehend the power of heaven way the more one comprehended it. The fourth level of the Doctrine Palace was equivalent to the standard of a chaotic real god, and it would not be easy to achieve it. For example, a top genius like him had been stuck at the third level for a very long period of time, and he had been unable to achieve the fourth level. However, Jian Wushuang had actually managed to achieve the fourth level so easily. Damn it! Real god Feng gave a cry. When he saw Jian Wushuang's body appearing in front of him, he became vigilant immediately and also held his saber tighter. Swish! Jian Wushuang attacked, with his sword straight away, under the influence of the power of space-time. The stroke was so fast that even the naked eyes of a void real god were unable to capture it. Real god Feng also swung his saber to block the attack immediately. Clang, 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 clang. The both of them fought instantly. Moreover, the battle entered the climax as soon as they fought. If you like reading comics, please visit Webnovel Live. As for the experts outside the fighting space, they could tell with a glance that the battle was completely one-sided. Real god Feng had also comprehended two doctrines at the same time. Moreover, both his doctrines had achieved the peak of the third level, and they were very close to the fourth level. However, even though he was only one small step away, the gap between the power levels was so great that it was shocking. Jian Wushuang did not even need to use his reincarnation doctrine. He relied purely on his comprehension of the space-time doctrine, as well as his own sword principles. Moreover, he did not even unleash his power of space-time fully. However, even with all that, he still managed to completely suppress real god Feng. It's too fast. His speed is really too fast. Can't last any longer. I can't last any longer. Real god Feng was roaring in his mind. Although he did his best to block the attacks, and had also used all his tricks, he had only lasted for a short period of time against Jian Wushuang's attacks, and he was defeated in the end. The fighting space had already quieted down completely. Jian Wushuang still stood in his own position, and he was putting the Blood Mountain sword on his hands back into his scabbard slowly. In front of him, real god Feng was staring at him with an extremely grave expression. "Thank you for letting me win," Jian Wushuang chuckled. "As expected of an inverse cultivator, although you have only just become a real god, your comprehension of the space-time doctrine has already achieved the standard needed to clear the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace. You are indeed impressive, and I accept my defeat," real god Feng said with a low voice. After that, he took out a token of the Fairy Palace's legacy, gave Jian Wushuang 10 years of training time, and left. Outside the fighting space, real god Tianming and real god Qinyu was together. Even real god Feng has been defeated. This Jian Wushuang is very strong. Real god Qinyu exclaimed in admiration. He has already made a breakthrough to real god. Moreover, his comprehension of the space-time doctrine has already achieved the standard needed to clear the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace. Hence, It's normal for real God Feng to not be his opponent, real God Tianming said. Fourth level of the Doctrine Palace, that is the standard of a chaotic real God's comprehension. Since Jian Wushuang is so strong, who would still dare to have a match with him? Real God Chenyu said. Humph, of course, there is someone who would dare to bet a match with him. Real God Tianming's eyes turned cold. Tianming, you are referring to real God Chenyu looked toward real God Tianming. There's no rush. I have already sent a message to get him to come here. Real God Tianming laughed coldly. In no time, a figure appeared within the wrestling ring. When that person appeared, many real gods in the wrestling ring looked over immediately. The Monster King. Everyone's eyes turned grave. Even though quite a number of people present were eternal real gods, and the person who came was merely a void real god, no one dared to underestimate him. After all, he was Monster King, the number one among the void real gods. Feng, even you were defeated. The Monster King was still gloomy and evil like before. I was defeated. There's indeed quite a large gap in our abilities, real God Feng admitted magnanimously. This will be interesting. The Monster King grinned. However, his eyes turned hazy. Back then, Jian Wushuang left the Thunderbolt Island, and it is unknown as to where he went. Moreover, he left for 2,000 years, and when he returned, he had actually made a breakthrough to real God. Already? Monster King, are you here for Jian Wushuang as well? Real God Feng looked toward the Monster King. Haha, this Jian Wushuang is an inverse cultivator. Although I have defeated him in the past, he was merely a universe god that time. But now, I wish to see how strong he is after making a breakthrough to real God. The Monster King laughed nonchalantly. Then you had better be careful and not be careless. If not, you will have to give away your position as the number one of the void real gods. Real God Feng said. Chapter 1645, Fighting the Monster King Again. Chapter 1645, Fighting the Monster King Again. Haha, my first position is not something that be taken away from me easily. Even an inverse cultivator like him will not be able to do it. The Monster King laughed gloomily, and he entered the fighting space instantly. The Monster King has gone in. This is going to be interesting. No wonder how strong Jian Wushuang is. He is still slightly inferior compared to the Monster King. Many real gods within the wrestling ring were chatting with one another. Within the fighting space, the Monster King had already come in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, do you have the guts to fight me next? The Monster King laughed evilly. Why not? Jian Wushuang was not afraid in the slightest. Great. When you bet a match with me back, then, our stakes were 20 years of training time. Should it be the same this time round? The Monster King said. I only have 10 years of training time in the Fairy Palace. For the remaining 10 years, I will offer you 1,000 years of training time in the Thunderbolt Island, as well as 100 Doctrine Gems as replacement, Jian Wushuang said. No problem. The Monster King nodded his head. I heard that you defeated real God Feng with your space-time doctrine. From this, it means that your level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine has already reached the level necessary to clear the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace? That's right, Jian Wushuang admitted. Read more chapter on VIP novel. You also know that what I am most proficient in is the space-time doctrine. Since that is the case, let's see whose level of comprehension is higher. The Monster King laughed strangely, and his body flashed abruptly. With the flash, he had already disappeared. Swoosh! The void behind Jian Wushuang was broken open, and the Monster King stepped out of it. The gloomy, cold dagger in his hands then headed toward Jian Wushuang's head. When Jian Wushuang had fought with the Monster King 2,000 years ago, the Monster King had used the same attack and Jian Wushuang was unable to block it. However, this time round, swish, the pitch-black dagger, which was emitting an infinite amount of gloom and a cold aura, pierced through Jian Wushuang's head directly. However, no blood was seen. A fragmentary shadow. The Monster King raised his eyebrows. I will not fall for the same move twice. Moreover, I will not be defeated by the same opponent twice. Jian Wushuang's ice-cold voice could be heard from a void by the side. At the same time, an ice-cold sword shadow had already cut open the void and was heading toward the Monster King. The Monster King moved sideways, and the sword shadow brushed past his body. However, at that very moment, Jian Wushuang dashed forward fiercely. Boom! His speed, that had caused even real god Feng to tremble with fear, was unleashed. Ha! I really want to see whose speed is faster. The Monster King grinned hideously, and his body moved as well. Swoosh! 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 The two shadows were shuttling back and forth within the fighting space. While they were moving, they also left behind strange, fragmentary shadows, which caused everyone to be dazzled. Outside the fighting space. So fast! Both of their speeds are fast. Where are the both of them? Many real gods were watching with great concentration. However, all of a sudden, a thunder-like sound could be heard, and those real gods looked toward the source of the sound immediately. However, they only saw that a part of the void that had burst apart completely. Moreover, even though that part of the void had just burst apart, another part of the void, which was 1,000 miles away, had twisted open as well. At the same time, a sword shadow appeared and split the universe into two halves. Another explosive sound could be heard. However, this time around, the sound came from the edge of the fighting space. Speed. This was a duel in terms of speed. Ha! Jian Wushuang, after not seeing you for 2,000 years, your level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine has indeed risen by quite a lot. However, it's a pity that this kind of speed is still not enough. The Monster King's voice could be heard. However, the people outside the fighting space had absolutely no idea where the Monster King was. Is that so? Jian Wushuang grinned. He then stopped hiding his power of space-time and unleashed it completely. It should be known that the power of space-time that Jian Wushuang had unleashed from the start until then was only at the standard that had just cleared the 4th level of the Doctrine Palace. However, at that very moment, he had gone all out with his power of space-time, which was already extremely near to clearing the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. Boom! Jian Wushuang moved around crazily like a shooting star, and his speed was at least 3 times faster than before. What? The Monster King's expression changed slightly. His eyes then turned grave straight away as he realized that the speed that Jian Wushuang had just displayed was actually slightly faster than him. Puff! Jian Wushuang's body appeared, and he swung the Blood Mountain sword on his hands straight away. Swish! 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 A total of 10 strokes were swung out in an instant. Every stroke was so fast that it was unbelievable, and they were just like shooting stars. The Monster King's eyes turned cold. At the next moment, a great amount of purple thunderbolts rose from his body and spread across the surrounding with a shocking speed. The purple thunderbolts contained extremely violent power. In just an instant, they had covered the whole fighting space and changed it into a vast purple thunder pond. As for the dagger on the Monster King's hands, it was accumulating a great amount of thunderbolt power. He then attacked with the dagger. Clang! 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 Many loud sounds could be heard. The Monster King had already unleashed his full power. However, after tens of clashes, his body could no longer take it, and he was sent flying by the impact. How is this possible? The Monster King's face was filled with fear. I actually lost in a clash of power. The Monster King was totally unable to believe what had happened. He had comprehended two heaven ways at the same time, namely the space-time doctrine and the sacred thunder doctrine. Moreover, the sacred thunder doctrine was the same as the extermination doctrine of the Supreme Four doctrine, which focused mainly on attack power. His comprehension of the sacred thunder doctrine had already achieved the standards to clear the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace as well. Under such circumstances, when his attack, which contained the full power of the Sacred Thunder Doctrine, clashed with Jian Wushuang's sword principles, the end result was actually him being sent flying. This is the Thunderbolt Island, and our divine power is the same. Even if he is an inverse cultivator, he should only be able to unleash the divine power at the level of a normal void real god as well. However, in a head-on clash in terms of power, he actually pushed me back. Could it be his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine has also achieved the standard necessary to clear the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace, and it might even be at a higher level? As the Monster King thought about that, his whole face was filled with astonishment. He knew that Jian Wushuang had comprehended the space-time doctrine and reincarnation doctrine at the same time. In terms of power, the reincarnation doctrine was slightly inferior to the extermination doctrine and the sacred thunder doctrine, whose main focuses were on attack power. However, Jian Wushuang had still sent him flying, and this could only mean that Jian Wushuang's level of comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine was higher than his level of comprehension of the sacred thunder doctrine. Since his speed is slightly faster than mine, his level of comprehension should be at a higher level than mine. But now, even his level of comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine is this high? The Monster King had already started to feel anxious. As for Jian Wushuang, he had already unleashed his speed completely, and he was using his sword principles repeatedly. With such speed, the Monster King could only rely on some of his own techniques to sustain himself with difficulty. He even relied on his comprehension of the space-time doctrine to shuttle back and forth within the fighting space. With this, he avoided Jian Wushuang completely, and it was obvious that he wanted to play hide-and-seek with Jian Wushuang. He would hide, and Jian Wushuang would chase after him. Chapter 1646, the fifth level. Chapter 1646, the fifth level. This Monster King, Jian Wushuang, held his sword with one hand, unleashed his speed, and chased the Monster King continuously as he wanted to kill him. However, although the Monster King's speed was inferior to Jian Wushuang, he could still use the power of space-time to move around in the void to dodge the attack. Hence, Jian Wushuang was unable to do anything to him for a period of time. In no time, both their bodies stopped moving. Jian Wushuang, I admit that your current abilities are not weaker than mine. Thus, it's pointless for us to continue fighting as we will not reach an outcome. As such, let us call it a day here, the Monster King said. Call it a day? You wish. Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. Do you think that by relying on some of the different ways of using the power of space-time to avoid fighting with me head-on, I would be unable to do anything to you? Don't forget that I have yet to use my martial art motion at all. Martial art motion. The Monster King was shocked. He remembered at once that back then, when Jian Wushuang had fought with him, he had unleashed a martial art motion. Moreover, that martial art motion was extremely strange, and it could create hundreds of shadows at the same time. At that very moment, when Jian Wushuang fought with him, he had indeed not used it yet. Monster King, just admit your defeat earnestly. Jian Wushuang's voice reverberated through the area. when his body moved fiercely, close to 100 shadows appeared immediately. Similarly, there were close to 100 shadows. However, when Jian Wushuang unleashed that move at that very moment, it was completely different from before. Previously, his comprehension of the space-time doctrine had only had the right to clear the third level of the Doctrine Palace. However, at that moment, he was extremely close to the fifth level. Furthermore, that martial art motion secret skill of his was closely linked to his comprehension of the space-time doctrine. Many shadows could be seen moving around in the void, and their speeds were extremely fast. Just like before, the Monster King wanted to rely on his power of space-time to deal with Jian Wushuang. However, this time around, puff, a sword light appeared beside the Monster King straight away, and there was no way for him to dodge the attack. Therefore, he could only choose to fight with Jian Wushuang head-on. However, as soon as he clashed with Jian Wushuang head-on, he would definitely be completely suppressed. Damn it! The Monster King gritted his teeth, and he had an extremely ugly expression. However, his situation became worse by the second, and finally Jian Wushuang's sword struck his head. Buzz, the fighting space quietened down. Monster King, thank you very much for your 20 years of training time. Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently. The Monster King had a gloomy expression. At the same time, his eyes were glowing with a cold light, and he was filled with dissatisfaction. However, no matter how dissatisfied he was, with so many people looking at the fighting space, he could not go back on his words. Hence, he could only give 20 years of training time to Jian Wushuang earnestly. After that, he gave a cold hum and left. 30 years of training time. As Jian Wushuang looked at the extra numbers on his own token of the Fairy Palace's legacy, he revealed a smile. For the space-time doctrine, he was already extremely close to clearing the fifth level of the Doctrine Palace, and he was confident that he could achieve the standard needed to clear it in 10 years' time. However, at that moment, he had a total of 30 years. This is more than enough, and there is no need for me to continue betting on matches. Jian Wushuang moved his body and headed outside the fighting space immediately. As soon as he walked out of the fighting space, he realized that many eyes were looking at him at once. Those eyes were filled with admiration. This Jian Wushuang has actually defeated the Monster King. He is the person recognized as the #1 among the Void real gods. Moreover, he has only just made a breakthrough to real god, and it is obvious that there is still huge room for his abilities to improve. It is really not possible to look at an inverse cultivator normally. Even though there were still voices discussing the matter, Jian Wushuang had already left. After leaving the fighting space, Jian Wushuang came before the Fairy Palace again. After that, he entered the space-time Fairy Palace straight away and began his comprehension. As per what Jian Wushuang expected, he managed to fully comprehend the 15th picture scroll within the space-time Fairy Palace in less than 10 years. With that, Jian Wushuang's level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine was high enough to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. By clearing the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace, one would possess the right to live in the Thunderbolt Island permanently. However, to achieve that, I would have to first challenge the Doctrine Palace for real. Jian Wushuang laughed. There's no rush. Let me first grasp the power of the final stage of the Flowing Light secret skill. Moreover, I also have one trump card that I have not touched for many years, and it's time for me to take a look at it. Within the Thunderbolt Island, there were many standalone spaces which were prepared to allow some experts to practice their secret skills. At that moment, within one of the standalone spaces which was in complete darkness, swoosh, 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 An uncountable number of shadows seemed to have flooded the whole standalone space. Moreover, those shadows were moving at high speed, and it was impossible for anyone to use their naked eyes to differentiate the real body which was hiding within the shadows. Puff! All of a sudden, the great number of shadows dissipated, and only Jian Wushuang remained in the whole standalone space. After my comprehension of the space-time doctrine has achieved the standard needed to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace, I can indeed unleash the power of the final stage of the flowing light phantom. However, I have only just entered the 5th level, and it is still a bit difficult for me to unleash it. Compared to the real God who created this martial art motion, I am probably still very far away. However, when my comprehension of the space-time doctrine reaches the peak of the 5th level, where it is extremely close to the 6th level, I should be comparable to that real God, Jian Wushuang muttered. After having a good grasp of the martial art motion, Jian Wushuang flipped his hands and took out an item. What Jian Wushuang took out was a normal picture scroll that did not seem unusual when seen with naked eyes. The picture scroll was also slightly yellowish in color. For such a kind of picture scroll, even if it were thrown onto the streets, no one would bend down and pick it up. However, Jian Wushuang was certain that such a normal picture scroll was worth so much that countless experts would fight for it madly. It was because of that fact that it was a chaos divine treasure. Mountain River Map. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly, and he was looking at the ancient picture scroll which was floating in front of him. The picture scroll was given to him by a master. Moreover, it had also been with him for many years. However, during those years, Jian Wushuang had only used the picture scroll once. That time, he had to rely on swallowing the blood that King Luozhen left behind forcefully to unleash the techniques of the picture scroll with difficulty. It was just that one time. As for his master Xian using the Mountain River Map to refine the grand formation of the enduring samsara later on, that was his master's technique, and it was unrelated to him. There was no choice. The picture scroll's level was too high. Hence, Jian Wushuang absolutely did not have the right to use its power with his abilities. He had never possessed the ability. In other words, although he had an unbelievable treasure, he could only leave it lying in his Qian Kuan ring as he was unable to use it. That had always been the case. However, at that moment, it was different. The Mountain River Map is a valuable treasure that is at the level of a chaos divine treasure. Under normal circumstances, only Almighties will be able to unleash the full power of a chaos divine treasure. However, for the current me, I do not need to unleash its full power. It will be enough as long as I am able to unleash a portion of its power. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly. Chapter 1647, Sanctuary Mountain. Chapter 1647, Sanctuary Mountain. As a chaos divine treasure, the Mountain River Map had a high requirement of divine power. A normal real god would be unable to use such a treasure. As an inverse cultivator, Jian Wushuang possessed the ultimate divine power, which was not weaker than a chaotic real god's divine power. Hence, he could barely use the treasure. The most frightening thing of the Mountain River Map were the 9 continents that it contained. The 9 continents would change into an earth-shaking 9-province seal. The 9-province seal contained a total of 9 moves. A long time ago, Jian Wushuang had grasped the first move. However, he lacked the divine power necessary to use it. At that very moment, as he possessed the necessary amount of divine power, he could naturally use it. Let's try it. Jian Wushuang attempted to use the first move at once. With a wave of his hand, the Mountain River Map blended into the surrounding void. An unusual ray of light appeared, and the void, which was originally in complete darkness, started to change at once. Atop the void, a giant and exceptionally beautiful picture scroll world appeared slowly, and it spread all over the heaven like flowing water. The world contained mountains and rivers. The scenery was beautiful. The most attractive thing was naturally the 9 continents, which were spread all over 9 different corners. The mountains and rivers are as palms, and the 9 provinces as the seal. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing with a shrill light, and he shouted out those words with a pause in between each word. Every word contained a special magical power. At the same time, he released the divine power from his body crazily, and it entered the picture scroll world. In no time, one of the 9 continents became extremely lifelike and came out from the picture scroll world slowly. Rumble! The continent descended completely. It then fell on its frightening weight. With that, the stand-alone void was torn open completely like paper. In the blink of an eye, the power dissipated and the stand-alone void quietened down. Only the exceptionally beautiful picture scroll world, which was flowing slowly in the heavens, remained. Jian Wushuang was sitting on the void, and he drew a light breath. As expected of a chaos divine treasure, although I can barely use it with my divine power, I can only unleash 40% of the power of the 9 province seal's first seal. As for my divine power, I have used more than 50% of it. Jian Wushuang gasped. He had only become an ultimate real god recently. Hence, his body only contained 1 ultimate divine power water droplet, and he did not possess enough divine power. By using the eternal divine treasure forcefully, he would deplete a great amount of divine power. However, even though the rate of depletion was shocking, its power did not disappoint him. If I am not wrong, if I were to activate the mountain river map and use the first seal of the 9 province seal with my current divine power, its power would be enough to kill a normal chaotic real god easily. Moreover, even top experts from the chaotic real gods would be unable to block it. If I were to combine it with the secret skill of Star Palace, even if it were experts in the real god ranking list, probably not many of them would be able to block it. Moreover, even if they were able to block it, they would definitely end up in a bad state. In other words, I currently have 2 strongest trump cards. The first one is the secret skill of Star Palace, while the second one is this mountain river map. Moreover, if I were to come across a strong enemy who I cannot block at all, I could use these 2 trump cards at the same time. If I were to go up another stage and become a stage 2 ultimate real god, where my divine power is equivalent to that of a normal almighty, I should be able to unleash the full power of the 9 province seal's first move. Moreover, I might even be able to unleash the second move and third move of the 9 province seal. At that time, I will be able to unleash the true power of this chaos divine treasure. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and his eyes were glowing brilliantly. Thunderbolt Island, Doctrine Palace. As the goal of the power of Heavenway's comprehension, the Doctrine Palace had always been lively as experts would come to challenge the Doctrine Palace from time to time. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang had also come before the Doctrine Palace. Lord Yuji, Jian Wushuang greeted a black-robed, middle-aged man who was in front of him. You are the lineage of Star's inverse cultivator. Jian Wushuang, the black-robed, middle-aged man's voice was cold. Why, have you come to challenge the Doctrine Palace as well? I have come here to give it a try, Jian Wushuang laughed. How many levels do you wish to challenge? The black-robed, middle-aged man asked. I shall start from the 4th level. If it's possible, I also wish to clear the 5th level, Jian Wushuang said bluntly. Oh, then I shall wait and see. The black-robed, middle-aged man raised his eyebrows. You may go in. Jian Wushuang walked toward the Doctrine Palace at once. Although there was only one Doctrine Palace, many people could challenge it at the same time. Jian Wushuang went straight to the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace. The fourth level was within a group of huge volcanoes, and a red armored shadow was standing on the sky above the group of volcanoes. The red armored shadow looked toward Jian Wushuang. I can tell that you have been comprehending the reincarnation doctrine and space-time doctrine at the same time. Hence, you can choose to use either the reincarnation doctrine, space-time doctrine, or a combination of both to clear this level. I choose the space-time doctrine. Jian Wushuang laughed. Although he was comprehending two heaven ways, only his space-time doctrine could clear the fifth level of the Doctrine Palace. In a split second, Jian Wushuang fought with the red armored shadow. As it was only the fourth level of the Doctrine Palace, Jian Wushuang cleared it easily without using a lot of energy. After that, he came to the fifth level of the Doctrine Palace. Outside the Doctrine Palace sat the black-robed, middle-aged man. He was the person in charge of the Doctrine Palace. Hence, he knew everything that was happening within the Doctrine Palace clearly. Yes, that Jian Wushuang has really cleared the fifth level. The black-robed, middle-aged man was surprised. In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang walked out from the Doctrine Palace. Little kid, you are not too bad. Even though you have only become a real god recently, you have cleared the fifth level of the Doctrine Palace. Looking at these abilities of yours, there probably isn't a second void real god who is superior to you in the Sanctuary Alliance. The black-robed, middle-aged man giggled. Since you have cleared the fifth level, according to the rules of the Thunderbolt Island, you now possess the right to stay in the Thunderbolt Island permanently, and I will let the person in charge of the Sanctuary Mountain know about this matter. Now, you can go to the Sanctuary Mountain and choose a place to build your own palace or cave. After hearing what was said, Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened up immediately. The right to stay in the Thunderbolt Island permanently was something that could make many eternal real gods, as well as a few chaotic real gods, extremely envious. Furthermore, at that very moment, Jian Wushuang possessed this right after having become a real god recently. Jian Wushuang headed to the Sanctuary Mountain right away. The Sanctuary Mountain was in the northern region of the Thunderbolt Island, and it was extremely huge. Upon arriving at the Sanctuary Mountain, Jian Wushuang looked at the enormous mountain range in front of him. At the same time, he also saw many different kinds of palaces, caves, and courtyards on the mountain range, and there were many of them. Moreover, those structures and buildings were well distributed. Most of them were either at the foot of a mountain or halfway up a mountain. As for palaces at the top of the mountain, there were very few of them. The people living at the top of the mountains of the Sanctuary Mountain should be almighties. The foot of the mountains and halfway up the mountains should be places where real gods live. Jian Wushuang laughed nonchalantly, and in no time he found a place. Chapter 1648, 1648, the right to stay permanently. 1648, the right to stay permanently. This place it shall be. As Jian Wushuang looked at a spacious area which was halfway up a mountain, he waved his big hands immediately. With that, a great amount of divine power appeared. The divine power then turned into a black castle in the open area. By achieving abilities similar to Jian Wushuang, one would be able to use their divine power to create a palace or cave easily. However, as Jian Wushuang was creating his castle, he also attracted the attention of the masters of some palaces in his vicinity. Looks like I will have another new neighbor. I wonder who he is. A long-robed old man floated over, and in no time he came to the void that Jian Wushuang was in. At the same time, he also saw Jian Wushuang. A void real god. The long-robed old man revealed a surprised expression right away. Although Jian Wushuang's divine power could rival that of a chaotic real god's, he was still a stage 1 real god in the end. Thus, the aura that he had released was only at the level of a void real god, and the long-robed old man could tell with a glance straight away. I am Jian Wushuang, from the lineage of Star. Greetings to real god Wuxing, Jian Wushuang said modestly. Jian Wushuang? The inverse cultivator of the lineage of Star? The long-robed old man, known as real god Wuxing, opened his eyes wide. You are actually creating a palace in the Sanctuary Mountain. Could it be that you have already cleared the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace? I was just fortunate, Jian Wushuang chuckled. You have really cleared it. Real god Wuxing felt that it was unbelievable. He knew that Jian Wushuang had only cleared the inverse cultivation test for the 3rd heaven not too long ago. Moreover, after fighting with the experts of the 4-symbol mansion in the burning demon region, he became extremely famous, and even his identity as an inverse cultivator was exposed. However, the abilities that Jian Wushuang displayed during the battle in the burning demon region were merely that of a normal eternal real god. Similarly, his level of comprehension of the heaven way was not very high. Furthermore, how many years has it been since that battle? Not only had he made a breakthrough to real God, he had also cleared the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. How shocking was his speed of improvement? Real God Wuxing, do you want to have a chat with me in my castle? Jian Wushuang questioned. It's fine. Real God Wuxing shook his head, and in the blink of an eye, he left. Not long after that, real god Wuxing spread the news of Jian Wushuang creating a castle in the Sanctuary Mountain, and that he had also cleared the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. In no time, the whole Thunderbolt Island and even the whole Sanctuary Alliance was shocked. It must be known that up till the very moment, the Monster King, who was previously known as the number 1 of the Void real gods, had only managed to clear the 4th level of the Doctrine Palace, even though he had been stuck in Void real god for many years. What about Jian Wushuang? He had only made a breakthrough not too long ago, and there was still huge room for him to improve as a Void real god. Not to mention that he would also become an eternal real god and chaotic real god in the future. Too fast. Jian Wushuang's speed of improvement is too fast. He has managed to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace, even though he has only made a breakthrough to real God not too long ago. And this is really frightening. Could this happen because of him being an inverse cultivator? No. Although inverse cultivators are frightening, they do not have much of an advantage in terms of comprehension of the power of Heaven Way. For Jian Wushuang to be able to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace after making a breakthrough to real God recently, it is completely thanks to his own power of comprehension as well as his own talents. In other words, even if Jian Wushuang were not an inverse cultivator, he will still be a monster-level super genius of the eternal chaotic world. By adding his identity as an inverse cultivator on top of that, his potential is a lot greater than real God Wu Bei's. That's right. Although real God Wu Bei is also an inverse cultivator, his comprehension of the power of Heaven Way is not as slick as Jian Wushuang's. The Sanctuary Alliance, the Thunderbolt Island, as well as the experts of powerhouses from everywhere were discussing and exclaiming. Of course, to the Sanctuary Alliance, it was good news to them that such an amazing genius had appeared. However, to other experts or powerhouses who had ulterior motives, it was completely different. At the 4-symbol mansion of the 10 cultivation sanctuaries colored glaze sanctuary, Within a lofty palace, the four-symbol mansion master, as well as many high-level experts of the four-symbol mansion, were gathered together. The fifth level. The four-symbol mansion master was the intimidating man who wore a robe. His eyes, which were glowing with a shrill light, were looking down. How long has that Jian Wushuang been training in the Thunderbolt Island? It has not even been 2,000 years, right? It has been less than 5,000 years since the battle between him and the four-symbol mansion. After such a short amount of time, he was able to clear the fifth level of the Doctrine Palace. Moreover, he also made a breakthrough to real God. If he were given a bit more time, wouldn't he become an almighty? Many high-level experts of the four-symbol mansion who were within the palace had extremely ugly expressions. Jian Wushuang's speed of improvement was indeed frightening. Mansion Master. All of a sudden, real God Qi was started to speak. Shouldn't we change the way we treat Jian Wushuang? Qihua, what are you trying to say? The four-symbol mansion master looked at real God Qihua. Jian Wushuang himself is an inverse cultivator, and his power of comprehension is so great. Now, he has managed to clear the fifth level of the Doctrine Palace, even though he has only just made a breakthrough to real God. Moreover, with the frightening level of an inverse cultivator, he should be able to get into the real God ranking list when he becomes an eternal real God. If he were to become a chaotic real God, he would definitely possess the fighting capabilities of an almighty. Furthermore, he might be even stronger than real God Wu Bei. Hence, there is no need for the four-symbol mansion to continue making things so difficult for him. Real God Qihua said. Qihua, are you trying to say that the four-symbol mansion should stop going after him from now on? Even though he has killed tens of real gods of the four-symbol mansion in the burning demon region, we should just leave this matter as it is? An elder stepped out and shot down his suggestion. However, real God Qihua laughed. The hatred between the four-symbol mansion and Jian Wushuang actually originated from the battle in the burning demon region. You're right. During that battle, the four-symbol mansion indeed suffered big losses, as many real gods died. However, those real gods were merely some normal void real gods. Since there are so many void real gods in the four-symbol mansion, it would be considered nothing even if a few of them were to die. Thus, the only thing that can be said to be lost is the four-symbol mansion's prestige. The four-symbol mansion has always wanted to kill him so that we can get back our prestige. If Jian Wushuang's speed of improvement were not so fast, we would indeed be able to take action and kill him when there is an opportunity to do so. However, now, not only he has already made a breakthrough to real God, he is also a member of the Sanctuary Alliance. In addition, his potential is unbelievable. If such a person continues to grow, at the very least, he will possess the fighting capabilities of real God Wu Bei when he is at his peak. With some opportunities, he will probably become another Star Palace master. If his luck is really good, there might even be hope for him to achieve the level of an emperor in the future. Therefore, it is too risky to go after such a top genius unyieldingly in order to get back some prestige. After hearing real God Qi's words, everyone present became silent. After thinking it through many times, they felt that real God Qi's words were rational. After all, although Jian Wushuang had offended the four-symbol mansion, it was not at the stage where they had to fight to their last gasp. Chapter 1649, 1649, the Eighth Lair. 1649, the Eighth Lair. Jian Wushuang has too much potential, and it would be great if we could kill him in time. However, if we are unable to kill him, he will become trouble for us in the future. Moreover, there is still the lineage of stars supporting him. Hence, fighting such a genius with such talents to the death for the sake of prestige is indeed Not worth it. The four-symbol mansion master's voice was so loud that it shook the heavens. He then took out a transmission token straight away and sent a message. In no time, he got a reply. After getting a reply, the four-symbol mansion master nodded his head and looked around. I have already negotiated with the lineage of Star. From today on, the four-symbol mansion and the lineage of Star, as well as Jian Wushuang, will keep out of each other's affairs. There is no need for the four-symbol mansion to find trouble for him, and he also does not have a reason to deal with us of his own accord. Mansion Master is wise. Real God Qi was shouted at once. The other experts within the palace also nodded their heads. At the peak of a lofty mountain in the Thunderbolt Island, Jian Wushuang has cleared the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. When the Monster King got wind of the news, his face turned hideous immediately, and his eyes were filled with an unprecedented murderous intent. This little kid, the Monster King, clenched his fists tightly, and he took out a token at the next moment. Jian Wushuang has already cleared the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. His speed of improvement is too fast, and we will need to find a way to get rid of him immediately. If not, he will definitely cause huge trouble for us in the future. Moreover, we should not drag this on for too long. The longer we drag it on for, the stronger his abilities will be. Just as everyone was talking about Jian Wushuang, no one knew that he had already left the Thunderbolt Island. Within the Black Void, an ancient spaceship which came from the outside world was moving forward slowly. Within the spaceship sat Jian Wushuang, and he was communicating with Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, the four-symbol mansion master, has sent me a message personally. Although he did not say it bluntly, he managed to get his message across, saying that he no longer wishes to be enemies with the lineage of Star or you, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh, Jian Wushuang was surprised. In any case, the four-symbol mansion is an overlord of the 10 sanctuaries. Moreover, I have killed 10s of their real gods. However, they actually let me off so easily. Haha. Of course, they do not wish to let you off. However, they had no choice. After all, the talents and potential that you revealed were too shocking, and it caused the four-symbol mansion to be extremely fearful. When facing you, they had 2 choices. They would fight you to death, and there is a possibility that you might die. Next, it might also be possible for you to grow, and in the future, you might destroy the four-symbol mansion. In addition, you must know that only 10s of Void real gods died, and this was considered nothing to the four-symbol mansion, apart from damage to their prestige. In order to kill you for prestige, they would risk getting the four-symbol mansion completely destroyed in the future. Hence, which choice do you think they would pick? Hall Master Yuan laughed. I see. Jian Wushuang could not help but laugh. In the end, abilities were equal to respect. The talents and potential that Jian Wushuang had displayed had already caused the four-symbol mansion to feel fearful. Hence, the four-symbol mansion would rather suffer losses than continue fighting with Jian Wushuang. As such, they chose to make up with the lineage of Star. Oh, right. Hall Master Huan, have you prepared the item that I want? Jian Wushuang questioned. I have finished preparations for it, and I will send it over to you later. However, Jian Wushuang, do you really wish to travel in that place? That place is extremely dangerous, Hall Master Yuan questioned. Of course I know that there is a great amount of danger. However, an inverse cultivator can only grow when faced with difficult situations. Training that is too easy and will only waste my talents. Jian Wushuang laughed. Moreover, my current abilities are probably high enough for me to travel there. Since you have made up your mind, I will not stop you. However, you must be really careful, and you must also remember what I have told you previously as well? Hall Master Yuan warned. All right, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Jian Wushuang rode the spaceship and continued to travel in the sky. Tens of years later, he came before an ancient and big spell. The spell covered a range of hundreds of millions of miles. It was extremely powerful, and it was definitely the greatest spell in the eternal chaotic world. The objective of the big spell was to completely seal up the void that it enclosed. As Jian Wushuang was a member of the Sanctuary Alliance, he could pass through the big spell directly. After passing through, he came to the vast void within the big spell. When Jian Wushuang came to the void, he looked at the scene in front of him with shock. It was a boundless void. However, the center of the void was twisted open completely. Over there was a black hole with a diameter of at least 100 million miles revolving. As the black hole revolved, it moved the surrounding void from time to time, and this generated air currents. These air currents possessed power to destroy the universe, and they could tear the void apart into pieces easily. It was the first time that Jian Wushuang had seen such a big black hole. The feeling that it gave him was that of an unprecedented, ancient, ferocious beast which had opened its large, fierce-looking mouth as if it wanted to swallow the whole universe. Jian Wushuang felt shocked, fearful, and even outraged. This is the entrance to the 8th lair. Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. Previously, he had been training in the Thunderbolt Island. After that, he took a trip to the ancient god's sanctuary. However, for the 2,000 years in the ancient god's sanctuary, he had spent most of his time training. It had been very easy. It would be fine for such an easy training to continue for a period of time. However, if it continued for too long, it would backfire on him. An expert could only be born by training and experiencing hardships. Hence, when Jian Wushuang's abilities achieved a certain level, he decided to travel straight away. As for the place to travel, what he chose was the 8th lair, which was in front of him. In the eternal chaotic world, the most infamous and hence dangerous place was the 8 lairs. The 8 lairs came into existence a very long time ago. Moreover, they had been known to be dangerous. They had also been ranked in order, with the next lair being more dangerous than the previous one. In particular, the danger level of the 8th lair was considered the lowest among the 8 lairs. Normally, only chaotic real gods would have the guts to travel there. Of course, there were also eternal real gods as well. However, these eternal real gods would only dare to travel at the outer layer of the 8th lair, and they dared not go deep in. For the 7th lair, no eternal real gods would dare to go there. Instead, only top chaotic real gods, as well as experts on the real god ranking list, would have the guts to travel there. As for the 6th lair, take Lei Chao of the lineage of Star as an example. Previously, he had gone there to travel. However, even to experts in the real god ranking list, there was a high risk of dying in there. As for the 5th lair, as well the 4th lair, 3rd lair, and 2nd lair, which were further in front, only Almighties dared to enter them. As for the 1st lair, it was said that even Emperor-level super experts dared not travel there. It was absolutely a forbidden area in the eternal chaotic world. Chapter 1650, 1650 Star Demon. 1650 Star Demon. The 8th lair was extremely dangerous. Jian Wushuang could only enter the last 8th lair to wander. Let's go in. After a deep breath, Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and took a huge stride into the black hole in the front. Passing through the obstacles, Jian Wushuang continued to move forward. He spent about half a month's time to reach the other end of the black hole. It was a world of darkness. There wasn't any sunlight, nor any light in the world. the dark earth and dark mountain to the river of the world were all black. In the void, black mist filled the air. The black mist brought about a pungent smell that made one sick. This black mist, I heard it is poisonous. If an ordinary void, real God stays in this world for a few years, I reckon he will be poisoned to death, while an eternal, real God could stay for a long while, 1,000 years at most. Only a chaotic, real God could survive in this world, Jian Wushuang said. Of course, his ultimate divine body was also at chaotic, real God level. Hence, he would be able to survive there. Jian Wushuang took huge strides and plunged forward slowly. His soul power was released entirely, and he saw everything in his surroundings. Just as Hall Master Yuan had said, the 8th lair is a total den of monsters. Any ordinary flowers and plants won't exist in here. Only in Black Land and Black Mountain, Jian Wushuang muttered. He plunged for more than 100 miles. Every place he passed was in total darkness and barren. Just then, Jian Wushuang was surprised, and he quickly flew downwards to the ground. On the Black Land, Jian Wushuang immediately noticed a strange strength spread from his feet. Even the ground contained the power of corrosion. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and looked at the magical creature before him. The magical creature had a human-sized body. It also had a pair of hands and legs and a head. The only difference from a human was that their bodies were extremely black. There were even places with faint black scales. On their heads, there was no nose but only an eye and a huge mouth. Their mouths revealed crimson, sharp teeth too. This is the Star Demon clan in 8 Lair. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Star Demon clan was the property of the 8th Lairs. In other words, the 8 Lairs were the 8 Lairs of Star Demon clan. There was only one type of living thing in the 8 Lairs. Besides the human experts who came to wander, there was only one other living thing, which was Star Demon clan. Read more chapter on Novelful. It was a special tribe that embodied terror and destruction in one. It wasn't human, nor was it an exotic beast. It belonged to magical creatures. The main purpose of the human experts who came to wander in the 8 Lair was to exterminate these magical creatures. On the Star Demon's head, there isn't any horn. It should have yet to turn into an adult, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Before he departed, he asked Hall Master Yuan for information about Star Demon. He knew that Star Demon grew up at a shocking speed, while an adult Star Demon was extremely powerful. One could tell they were adults from their body structure. As long as they were adult Star Demons, there would be horns on their heads, and the number of horns varied while their power varied too. Just when Jian Wushuang appeared on the Black Land, the Star Demon noticed Jian Wushuang. There was immediately crimson in its eyes. Cultivator, eat, eat. Simple and immature words fell from its mouth. Then there was black flowing light that burst out instantly. The speed was much faster than an ordinary void real god. Of course, the speed was nothing before Jian Wushuang. Humph! Jian Wushuang harumphed coldly, but never drew out his sword. He merely glanced at the Star Demon once. Eat, eat. The Star Demon continued to mutter, but its eyes closed slowly as his body fell on the ground. Then, it wasn't breathing anymore. Star Demon was also a living thing. Although they weren't intelligent, they had consciousness. As they had consciousness, Jian Wushuang's soul attack could be put to use. Star demons who have yet to turn into an adult, their power is really weak, Jian Wushuang said to himself. He could tell that the Star Demon before him, although it exploded at a speed faster than an ordinary void real god, its power was only equal to a peak universe god at most. Only when Star Demon turned into an adult, and grew horns on its head, its fighting power would only then be compared favorably with a human void real god. Jian Wushuang took a stride forward and came before the dead body of the star demon. He stole a glance at the dead body. Jian Wushuang quivered his hand, and the star demon immediately turned into crimson fog, while the crimson fog displayed a creepy black that gave people the chill down one's spine. No demon spirit. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows slightly. Star demon was a kind of magical creature. In Eternal Chaotic World, it was known as the biggest alternative. As a magical creature, its body contained an extremely unique substance, which was the demon spirit. The demon spirit was an extremely unique power. To human cultivators, it was extremely useful. The stronger the star demon's power, the more and the purer the demon spirit it contained. Especially those who were adult star demon with horns, the demon spirits in their bodies already formed a demon core. The demon core was precious. In Eternal Chaotic World, a low-grade demon core would be valued at 2 to 3 doctrine gems. Then, the star demon that Jian Wushuang had killed was obviously a star demon who was nurtured not long ago. There wasn't any demon spirit in its body. Jian Wushuang couldn't do anything about it either. Then, he continued his journey again and plunged forward. The 8th lair was really huge. Even when it was compared to humans' cultivation sanctuaries, the size was vastly different. In a huge lair, there were star demons all over the place. There were star demons everywhere. Some appeared alone, and some appeared in a group. The star demons shared the same character. They liked to eat. Even between star demons themselves, they often ate one another. After a star demon ate another star demon, it received the other's demon core or demon spirit. In turn, its power would increase. Of course, their favorite food was human cultivators. Hence, in the 8th lair, as soon as the star demons saw human cultivators, they would swarm over, but didn't care how strong the human was. Even when they saw the human cultivator kill all of its own kind surrounding it, it wouldn't retreat or escape. Chapter 1651, 1651 Inner Lair. 1651 Inner Lair. The wasteland was covered in darkness, and no light could be seen. Jian Wushuang had been traveling forward. At that moment, he was in the outer layer of the 8th lair. The outer layer contained very few star demons, and their levels were not very high. Hence, it was suitable for eternal real gods to travel through. As for chaotic real gods, they would normally go straight to the inner layer of the 8th lair to travel. As for the top chaotic real gods, most of them would travel to the core area of the 8th lair. I have just come to the 8th lair, and I have also just come into contact with a star demon. It is still a bit difficult for me to travel in the core. However, it is all right for me to travel in the inner layer. Jian Wushuang had already made up his mind. Comparing fighting capabilities, he was stronger than a normal chaotic real god. Jian Wushuang traveled at a fast speed. Along the way, he came across some star demons. However, most of the star demons were the kind which had not grown up yet, and Jian Wushuang was not interested in them. As such, he did not attack them. Instead, he made the best use of his time to continue traveling. Half a month later, he arrived at the inner layer of the 8th lair for real. In the inner layer, the star demons are probably more powerful. Moreover, they are also slightly more concentrated in number compared to the outer layer, where there are only 1 or 2 star demons together. Jian Wushuang murmured. All of a sudden, boom! Intense booming sounds could be heard from a distant black void. The booming sounds went on continuously, and it was obvious that they were being generated from an intense battle. In the 8th lair, apart from the star demons, there can only be human cultivators. Hence, this intense battle should be between human cultivators and star demons. Jian Wushuang was interested. Let me go and take a look. Jian Wushuang headed toward the source of the sound at once. In no time, he appeared in a void that was near the battlefield. While standing on top of the void, Jian Wushuang looked at the black open space in front of him. Even though the void was in total darkness, Jian Wushuang could still see everything that was happening on the open space clearly. Eat, eat. Cultivator, food. There were close to 100 star demons gathered together. Most of the star demons had not grown up yet. However, there were horns on the heads of some of them. Although their level of intelligence was lower, their abilities were extremely shocking. In particular, those star demons with horns had frightening speed, which could be compared to a normal eternal real gods. Moreover, in terms of fighting capabilities, they could compete with top void real gods. As for the person fighting against the star demons, he was a middle-aged man who wore black armor and a helmet and was holding a black giant axe on his hands. The middle-aged man had an imposing aura and a huge amount of divine power. While besieged by close to 100 star demons, he was still able to deal with them skillfully. When his body did a simple movement, it was as if he had swept past many black rays of light, and the star demons with horns could only follow behind him. He then swung his giant axe randomly. Every stroke could kill tens of immature star demons easily. A massacre. It was a one-sided massacre. Although there were many star demons, their abilities were not strong. Hence, when they faced off against a chaotic real god, there was indeed only room for them to be massacred. Jian Wushuang could also tell with a glance that the black-armored middle-aged man planned to kill off all those immature star demons first before dealing with star demons that had horns. Those immature star demons only possess fighting capabilities of a top universe god. Thus, it would be easy for a real god to kill them. After a short, while those star demons would all be killed by him, Jian Wushuang murmured. However, his eyes did not contain any sympathy at all. The star demons were a special clan which existed for the purpose of massacre and destruction. Their existence had always been a disaster. Everyone could remember the time where the eternal chaotic world was plunged into a disaster due to the Star Demon clan. That was a long time ago. The star demons in the 8 lairs had been multiplying in number and growing continuously. When their numbers reached a certain level, the space of the 8 stars became too small for them. As such, many star demons came out of the 8 lairs and started to eat continuously, destroying many territories and cultivators in the process. After that, they continued to multiply, and their numbers became even more shocking. At that point in time, countless experts in the eternal chaotic world became afraid of them. In order to stop the star demons, the almighties of the 10 sanctuaries formed the Sanctuary Alliance. In other words, the Sanctuary Alliance was born due to the threat of the Star Demon clan. After that, there was an unprecedentedly great battle between the Sanctuary Alliance and the Star Demon clan. Although many experts fell, the Sanctuary Alliance still won in the end with a decisive victory. With that, the Star Demon clan was chased back into the 8 lairs. However, since the Star Demon clan was born inside the 8 lairs, as long as the 8 lairs continued to exist, the Star Demon clan would continue to multiply. However, every lair of the 8 lairs was of Leviathan level. Thus, even if Emperor-level experts of the Sanctuary Alliance were to attack, personally, they would be unable to destroy the lairs. With that, they would naturally be unable to destroy the Star Demon clan completely. At most, they could only use some powerful spells and seals to seal up the 8 lairs completely. Moreover, the Sanctuary Alliance also highly encouraged many experts to travel within the 8 lairs to massacre the star demons. After all, they could only kill the newly born star demons, as well as immature star demons, to prevent the star demon clan from ever posing a threat to the human being's sanctuary again. Jian Wushuang already knew about it. As such, when he saw the black-armored middle-aged man in front of him going on a killing spree, he did not feel disgusted about his actions in the slightest. Therefore, the star demons, which were born for the sake of destruction, were killed before they were able to grow up. A massacre by a chaotic real god expert was done with shocking speed. Within a short while, all the star demons, including those matured star demons with horns, were killed by the black-armored middle-aged man. At the same time, the black-armored middle-aged man also obtained many demon spirits, as well as a few demon cores from the star demons. After keeping the demon spirits and demon cores, the black-armored middle-aged man looked toward Jian Wushuang. After observing for so long, isn't it about time for you to show yourself? The black-armored middle-aged man spoke, and his voice could be heard. Jian Wushuang could not help laughing, and he walked over without hesitation. "Real God Kenyang," Jian Wushuang shouted, and his face was filled with kindness. Jian Wushuang had stayed in the Thunderbolt Island for many years. Therefore, he had also searched for some information intentionally. With that, he possessed definite information regarding the Sanctuary Alliance, as well as definite information of many real gods in the eternal chaotic world. For example, he could recognize the black-armored middle-aged man in front of him with a glance. He was real god Kenyang, a chaotic real god within the Sanctuary Alliance who traveled by himself. Avoid real god. Real god Kenyang squinted his eyes slightly. "You are Jian Wushuang." Chapter 1652. 1652. The Purpose of Demon Spiri. 1652. The Purpose of Demon Spiri. "It's me." Jian Wushuang nodded. "Humph. Avoid real god dares to wander in the 8th layer and come into the inner layer. You really have guts." Real god Kenyang harumphed coldly, and there was a flash of a strange light in his eyes. He thought to himself, "This Jian Wushuang, although he is only a void real god, he is the most outstanding disciple of lineage of star, and he is an inverse cultivator. Under normal circumstances, a top genius like him definitely received many opportunities, and he definitely has quite a bit of possession. He might have more than a chaotic real god. If I were to kill him here..." Real god Kenyang thought, and immediately shook his head. Jian Wushuang isn't an idiot. He dared to come to wander in 8th layer. So he definitely has a backer. Forget about the fact, if I could kill him. Even if I were to be lucky enough to kill him, the void that I'm in isn't cut off from the outside world. He could totally send out a message before he dies, and have lineage of star take revenge on his behalf. I am merely a solo chaotic real god. If I were to really be watched by lineage of star, it would be difficult for me to move around Sanctuary Alliance and even the entire eternal chaotic world. Forget about it. Real god, Kenyang made a decision in his mind. "Young man, the 8th layer isn't like any other place. You are only a void real god. I hope you can stay alive for a while." Real god Kenyang said, and then he turned to leave. Jian Wushuang stood there as he watched real god Kenyang leave, but he squinted his eyes slightly. If I'm not mistaken, real god Kenyang should have had the idea of killing me before. But in the end, he gave up the idea, Jian Wushuang muttered. The change of real god Kenyang's expression earlier, although it was greatly concealed, Jian Wushuang's soul power was spread out at all times and engulfed real god Kenyang within. He could even see real god Kenyang change his expression a slight bit. He naturally noticed real god Kenyang's glimpse of murderous intention. He should be worried about the lineage of star that is backing me up. He was worried that he couldn't kill me there, and then he was also worried that I would send out a message before I die. After all, The void around here isn't cut off from the outside world. He could only give up the idea. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. The 8th lair was a special space. In most places, space and the outside world could keep in contact, and they could send messages to one another. However, there were also many spaces that were cut off from the outside world. There was an area in the space that couldn't send out any messages. The place that Jian Wushuang was at then belonged to the former. It seems that Hall Master Yuan is right. When I am wandering in the 8th lair, not only must I be careful of the Star Demon clan and some natural danger, but I also must be careful of other experts who are wandering in the lair, Jian Wushuang said to himself. On the way to the 8th lair, Hall Master Yuan exhorted him about this. Sanctuary Alliance looked like an entire entity, but after all, it was united by huge forces and solo experts. The internal power of Sanctuary Alliance was complicated, and they were in a constant fight. War and massacre between themselves were very common. They naturally weren't of one mind. Even when they were in the 8th lair, the experts in Sanctuary Alliance would fight and scheme against one another. As long as there was interest, they would massacre and fight. About that, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance could do nothing about it, but gave free rein. I am the most outstanding disciple of lineage of Star, and I am an inverse cultivator. I must have received many opportunities. The experts in Sanctuary Alliance definitely know that, and it is inevitable that they will have wicked ideas. Jian Wushuang lifted the corner of his lips, but his gaze grew cold. Regardless, I'll do what I need to do. I do not find trouble with others. But if there were to be people who dared to make trouble with me, there would be no need for me to be polite. Then Jian Wushuang didn't continue to stay, but started wandering in the surrounding dark void. In the inner layer of the 8th lair, it was much bigger. The scattering of Star Demon was more densely populated. Jian Wushuang let out his soul power and wandered in the inner layer. He could find Star Demons with ease. Die! Jian Wushuang's soul power formed into a soul storm and covered the dozens of Star Demons before him. Among the dozens of Star Demons, there was only one adult Star Demon with the horn. Faced with Jian Wushuang's soul attack, only the Star Demon with a horn among the dozens of Star Demons withstood it. The other Star Demons were killed. Just as Jian Wushuang moved, he creepily appeared next to the adult Star Demon. A sword light swept out, and it cut off the adult Star Demon's head. Then Jian Wushuang started searching for Demon Spirit and Demon Core. In a short while, not bad, I found 9 Demon Spirit and 1 Demon Core. Jian Wushuang smiled. The Star Demon clan, although they are the only magical creature that knows how to destroy and massacre, the demon spirit in their bodies is an extremely pure strength. The strength is extremely useful to a cultivator. Jian Wushuang spread his hand, and there were 9 extremely pure, unique currents. The 9 currents were the 9 demon spirits. Besides, he also had a black crystal. The crystal was a magic core. In the magic core, there was a vast and pure strength. The demon spirit and the strength in the demon core are so pure. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but compliment. He could feel it clearly that demon spirits were an extremely high-end strength with no impurity. Such strength was put before him, and Jian Wushuang had the idea to swallow and absorb it. Let's give it a try. Jian Wushuang took in the first demon spirit into his body without hesitation. He raised the demon spirit, and it was immediately absorbed into his divine body. What's going on? Why can't I feel anything? Jian Wushuang was shocked. With confusion, He continued to absorb the second demon spirit, the third demon spirit, and the remaining 8 demon spirits altogether. He took in 9 demon spirits in one, but Jian Wushuang didn't feel any difference in his divine body. That's not right. Jian Wushuang's expression suddenly changed. There's nothing different with my divine body, but my divine power, it seems to have improved. Yes, it improved. My ultimate divine power feels like much more than before. Jian Wushuang's eyes twinkled with joy. I understand now. This demon spirit is absorbed and transformed into a cultivator's divine power. The speed of transformation is extremely fast. In other words, as long as one can absorb a large number of demon spirits, the divine power in cultivator's body will increase tremendously. There isn't a need to accumulate divine power through cultivation. Then, Jian Wushuang was filled with excitement. Chapter 1653, 1653, Jian Wushuang's Frenzy of Deligh. 1653, Jian Wushuang's Frenzy of Deligh. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly like never before, and he was also extremely delighted. After that, Jian Wushuang looked at the demon core. Read more chapter on Novelful. The demon core contained extremely pure power, which was similar to the demon spirit. However, the demon core contained more power compared to the demon spirit. I really wish that was the case. Jian Wushuang suppressed his excitement forcefully and started to absorb the power within the demon core. His speed of absorption was very fast like before. After a short while, the demon core, which was originally like a gem, had already been reduced to a normal black stone. As for the pure power within the demon core, all of it had been absorbed by Jian Wushuang and changed into divine power. Jian Wushuang could feel very clearly that the ultimate divine power within his body had increased greatly compared to before. Although he still lacked the power to form the second ultimate divine power water droplet, he was already very close to forming it. As expected. With that, Jian Wushuang could no longer suppress the happiness within his heart, and he laughed loudly without any restraint. Delightfulness. This was definitely delight, as it was something that Jian Wushuang had never expected. As such, it could be said to be a delight that he never had before. It should be known that Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator. After making a breakthrough to real God, he became an ultimate real God who possessed an ultimate body and ultimate divine power. At the start, there was only one droplet of ultimate divine power, which was considered very little. As such, Jian Wushuang had to restrict himself when he fought. With that, he had to rely on his own training to accumulate power so that his divine power would increase. From there, he would be able to form the second and third ultimate divine power water droplet. When the 10th ultimate divine power water droplet was formed, he would be able to make a breakthrough to become a stage 2 ultimate real God. That was the condition for an inverse cultivator to make a breakthrough. He only required sufficient divine power, and there were no other conditions. In other words, if Jian Wushuang wished to make a breakthrough, he would only need to continue raising his own divine power to form more ultimate divine power water droplets. He was unlike a normal cultivator. For normal cultivators, their divine power had to achieve its limit, and they must also have a certain level of comprehension of the power of Heaven Way. In addition, there were also requirements in many other areas, such as unique skills. It was only by fulfilling all these conditions that they could make a breakthrough. However, it was not very easy for one to raise his ultimate divine power, as he would need to accumulate power continuously for many years. Of course, he could also do so with the help of some resources or treasures that helped to raise one's divine power. Discounting the prices of those resources and treasures, The main thing was that they were of little help to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had tried taking some elixirs, which raised one's divine power in the Thunderbolt island. However, after taking 10 of them, which were worth 5 doctrine gems, his divine power had barely increased. A normal treasure is not of much use in helping me raise my ultimate divine power. Previously, I thought that I could only train for many years to accumulate power in order to make a breakthrough. However, now, Jian Wushuang was so excited that his body trembled. He had never expected the demon spirits and demon cores within the Star Demon clan's bodies to actually have the ability to raise his ultimate divine power greatly. After absorbing only 1 demon core and 9 demon spirits, the ultimate divine power in his body skyrocketed. If he were to obtain a sufficient number of demon cores, his ultimate divine power would definitely increase at an unbelievable speed. Demon cores. I need a large number of demon cores and demon spirits. Jian Wushuang was clenching both his fists tightly. At the next moment, he started to search the area unreservedly. Just like before, he searched for traces of the star demons. Previously, Jian Wushuang did not have strong urges to kill star demons. However, at that very moment, it was completely different. He yearned to find star demons and kill them so that he would be able to obtain the demon spirits and demon cores within their bodies. There's 28 star demons over there. In particular, there are 2 mature, one-horned star demons, but the remaining ones are still immature. I will kill all of them. There's only 13 star demons here. However, they are all immature. Humph, I do not need to care so much as I will still kill all of them. Haha, great. There's actually more than 80 star demons here. Among them, there are 4 mature, one-horned star demons. In addition, there's actually 1 two-horned star demon. Haha, this is excellent. Die. Jian Wushuang was massacring the star demons in the inner layer of the 8th layer crazily. His divine power and body were at the level of a chaotic real god. Moreover, his comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei had already reached the level where it could clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. By factoring in his numerous techniques as well, his fighting capabilities could rival a top chaotic real god, and he was also stronger than real god Longqing, who was hired to help him in the Blood Demon Church. With such fighting capabilities, he could travel around the core area of the 8th layer. As for the inner layer, he could go anywhere he wanted. Naturally, it was also easy for him to massacre the star demons in the inner layer. Time passed by, and in a flash, Jian Wushuang had already traveled for a total of 3 years in the inner layer. During the 3 years, although he had covered an enormous distance, it was still considered nothing when it was compared to how big the whole inner layer was. Atop the void, which was in complete darkness, Jian Wushuang, who was clothed in a crimson long robe and carrying a long sword, was flying forward slowly. Occasionally, blasts of cold wind would blow toward him and blow up his robe. However, it was unable to cause his body and mind to be shaken. At the very moment, Jian Wushuang was playing with his Qian Kuan ring and muttering to himself, "Although there are more star demons in the inner layer than the outer layer, they are not everywhere in the inner layer. For the past 3 years, I have been searching extremely hard for the traces of the star demons so that I can massacre them. However, even with this, I only obtained a few demon cores and demon spirits." Although he had massacred a huge number of star demons over the past 3 days, most of them were immature star demons. Hence, not many of them possessed demon spirits, and there were even fewer demon cores. He was not in a rush to absorb the demon spirits and demon cores. As such, he put them within his Qian Kuan ring. Jian Wushuang had just done a thorough check of his inventory. At that very moment, his Qian Kuan ring contained 361 demon spirits, as well as 19 demon cores. Among the demon cores, there were 2 grade 2 demon cores of 2-horned star demons. The pure power that the demon spirits contained is totally incomparable to the demon cores. Although I have 361 demon spirits, they are merely equivalent to 3 or 4 grade 1 demon cores. By counting it this way, I currently have 22 grade 1 demon cores and 2 grade 2 demon cores, Jian Wushuang murmured. In the eternal chaotic world, a demon core from a 1-horned star demon was worth 2 doctrine gems. A grade 2 demon core was worth about 10 doctrine gems. By counting it this way, Jian Wushuang had profited greatly from the past 3 years. However, Jian Wushuang was not satisfied. After all, his ultimate divine power was a lot more powerful than the normal divine power. Thus, he naturally required a more shocking number of demon cores. Chapter 1654, 3-horned star demon. 3-horned star demon. With just the demon cores that he had obtained so far, Jian Wushuang felt that he could at most be able to form the second ultimate divine power water droplet. If he wanted to form the third ultimate divine power water droplet, he would need more demon cores. I have to continue my massacre and think of a way to get more demon cores. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing with a shrill light. At that moment, that is, Jian Wushuang's expression changed abruptly, and his eyes could not help but look in a direction. At the end of that direction, there was a star demon moving forward slowly within the detection range of Jian Wushuang's soul power. Compared to the other star demons, that star demon was slightly bigger, and its body was more robust. However, what really attracted Jian Wushuang's attention were the 3 horns on that star demon's forehead. A star demon with 3 horns would possess fighting capabilities equivalent to that of a chaotic real god. Moreover, a portion of the body of the 3-horned star demon ahead of him was green in color. Although it was only one portion of its body, it still caused Jian Wushuang's eyes to turn grave. Luckily, this 3-horned star demon has yet to turn green completely. If not, with my current abilities, it would be very difficult to deal with it, Jian Wushuang said. He knew that there were 3 kinds of 3-horned star demons. The first kind was a 3-horned star demon, with its body completely black in color. Such a 3-horned star demon would possess fighting capabilities equivalent to that of a normal chaotic real god. The next kind was a 3-horned star demon, which was green in color, and it possessed fighting capabilities equivalent to that of a top chaotic real god. The last kind was a 3-horned star demon, which was crimson in color, and it possessed fighting capabilities equivalent to that of an expert in the real god ranking list. As for the 3-horned star demon in front of him, its body had a mix of both black and green colors. Thus, it was obvious that its fighting capabilities had not achieved the level of a top chaotic real god yet. 3-horned star demons are a lot stronger than 2-horned and 1-horned star demons. As such, the demon core in its body definitely possesses a greater amount of pure power. Also, 1 grade 3 demon core is probably comparable to tens of grade 1 demon cores. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly. His body moved at once, and he headed toward the 3-horned star demon. Atop the dark land, the 3-horned star demon, which was emitting a destructive aura, was moving forward slowly. However, all of a sudden, the 3-horned star demon, which had been moving forward, became alarmed. With that, it turned its body fiercely, and its scarlet eyes on its head locked on instantly to Jian Wushuang, who was approaching quietly. A human cultivator. Die! A sharp cry could be heard from the 3-horned star demon. After that, its body turned into a black lightning instantly and moved straight away. The higher the level of a star demon, the more intelligent it was. For example, immature star demons only knew how to eat. However, when they became a three-horned star demon, they would possess a certain level of intelligence. I have been discovered. Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised. He had concealed his aura intentionally and approached the three-horned star demon quietly. However, he did not expect the three-horned star demon to be so vigilant. Since I cannot launch a surprise attack, I shall clash with it head-on. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with murderous intent, and his blood mountain sword had already appeared on his hands. In addition, he had also stopped concealing his aura and unleashed it completely. Rumble, a great amount of aura spread toward the three-horned star demon. By holding his sword with one hand, Jian Wushuang became like a big bow, and the blood mountain sword on his hand became an arrow. With that, he shot his sword like an arrow straight away. Swish! The sword light whistled and ripped open the void in front of him immediately. Die! The three-horned star demon's eyes were scarlet in color. When black light appeared from its body, a great amount of destructive power gathered in its right hand. It then swung its claws with lightning speed. Bam! With a loud sound, Jian Wushuang was sent flying at once. What a strong power! It feels like it is considerably stronger than a normal chaotic real god. Jian Wushuang was shocked. However, at that moment, the three-horned star demon changed into a black shadow, did two simple leaps on the void, and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang again. Its sharp claws then attacked fiercely again. It is also very fast. Jian Wushuang's expression turned grave. His blood mountain sword on his hands then gave a cry and attacked immediately. Boom! Their attacks clashed, and after that, they began to fight a close-quarters battle. While Jian Wushuang was fighting an intense battle with the three-horned star demon, there were two figures moving forward at a void that was not too far away. Among the two of them, one of them was a plump, bald-headed young man, while the other one was a black-robed old man who looked quite arrogant. The two of them had also released their consciousness to search for traces of star demons. They had already searched for 3 consecutive months. However, they had only managed to find a small number of star demons. As such, when they split the demon spirits and demon cores that they had obtained, there were so few of them that it was pathetic. In the end, there are too few star demons in the inner layer, the black-robed, arrogant old man said. There are many star demons in the core region. If you are strong enough, you can be like real God Ziyi and go over there. The plump, bald-headed young man laughed. Humph, real God Ziyi is a top chaotic real god, and he is not too far away from the real god ranking list. Hence, how can I be compared to him? The black-robed, arrogant old man curled his lips and said, "Then stop saying unnecessary things and continue to search. Since we have not been in the inner layer for long, we will naturally not have too many demon cores. However, as time passes by, and we continue to accumulate them slowly, we will definitely make some gains in the end," the bald-headed young man said. "You're right," the black-robed, arrogant old man nodded his head. However, at that moment, boom, boom, soft booming sounds could be heard from a void that was far away. Even though the sounds were very soft as they came from very far away, the black-robed, arrogant old man and the bald-headed young man were chaotic real gods. Hence, they were naturally able to hear it. "Someone is fighting an intense battle ahead of us." The black-robed, arrogant old man's expression changed. "Let's go and take a look," the bald-headed young man said. The two of them then headed for the source of the sound straight away. Boom, 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 boom. Soft clashing sounds could be heard, and two figures were fighting against each other madly at the black void. Both of them had shocking speed. As they clashed, the impact generated from their clash caused the surrounding void to be torn into pieces. In addition, the ground below them was also in such a tragic state that it was horrible to look at. Whoosh! The sharp claws from the three-horned star demon's right hand ripped open the void and came in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang then retreated and avoided the attack easily. This three-horned star demon is very impressive in both its attacks and speed. Thus, it is slightly stronger than normal chaotic real gods. Even though its attack moves are simple, they are still frightening. At least, if a normal chaotic real god were to fight it, he would probably end up in a tragic state, Jian Wushuang murmured. However, at that moment, the three-horned star demon in front of him opened its fierce-looking mouth. Its fierce-looking mouth was already extremely huge to begin with. However, at that moment, its mouth expanded abruptly, and it looked as though a giant rift had appeared from the black space. The rift then headed toward Jian Wushuang's body. It actually wants to swallow me in one gulp. Jian Wushuang's expression changed. Chapter 1655 Extermination. 1655 Extermination. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang's body turned vague, and thousands upon thousands of shadows appeared at the same time. When the three-horned star demon's large and fiercely looking mouth attacked, it swallowed 10 shadows straight away. After the three-horned star demon chewed a few times, it realized that no physical substance existed. It then became infuriated at once, and from its scarlet eyes, buzz, a giant scarlet light burst forth, just like a scarlet sun, and the universe, which was in complete darkness, was illuminated with a crimson color. After that, the three-horned star demon turned its body, and the scarlet light from its eyes shone on Jian Wushuang's shadows, causing them to dissipate. "What's that?" Jian Wushuang frowned, and his real body was illuminated by the crimson light as well. In no time, an unreasonable power entered his brain and clashed with the soul power inside his sea of consciousness fiercely. At that moment, Jian Wushuang felt some pain from his brain. However, he recovered quickly. Damn it! This star demon actually knows consciousness attacks. Moreover, its consciousness attacks are very powerful. Jian Wushuang was shocked. When the crimson light shone on him, he indeed experienced a powerful consciousness attack, which was at the level of a chaotic real god. Although his soul was at the level of an eternal real god, it was fortunate that his soul power was extremely tough, and he was able to withstand the consciousness attack. All of a sudden, the three-horned star demon opened its large, fierce-looking mouth again. This time around, its mouth did not head toward Jian Wushuang. Instead, its mouth continued to open up with a shocking speed. In the end, its mouth covered half a void, and it looked just like a giant black hole. Straight away after that, a frightening swallowing force burst forth from its mouth abruptly, and it looked as if the universe had been swallowed. A great amount of dust and broken stones rose from the dark land at once, and they were sucked into the three-horned star demon's mouth. Jian Wushuang stood in the void like before, and he was affected by the frightening swallowing force as well. Even if it were him, he could not withstand the force, and he was about to be sucked into the mouth. What a strong swallowing force. Seems like this three-horned star demon is extremely determined to swallow me. Jian Wushuang's eyes were icy cold. Humph! By swallowing me, you might be so full that your stomach explodes. Jian Wushuang gave a cold hum. However, a vast amount of divine power was gathering on the index finger of his right hand crazily. Ancient God's fifth finger, get through difficulty. With a cry from Jian Wushuang, his right index finger, which had gathered its maximum amount of power, pointed abruptly. Rumble, a great amount of ancient god power, which was mixed with Jian Wushuang's ultimate divine power that could rival that of a chaotic real god, gathered on the void madly. In no time, it was changed into a giant hand. The whole giant hand was pitch black in color, and it was emitting a dim light. The giant hand then stretched outward, and its index finger contained a huge amount of power. This power was extremely special, and it was just like a complete reincarnation. When the index finger of the giant hand was pointed, it headed toward the three-horned star demon's large, fierce-looking mouth. Ever since Jian Wushuang had made a breakthrough to become a 6-star ancient god, he could use the get-through difficulty finger easily. Moreover, the power that he had unleashed was at its strongest. Boom! Fierce booming sounds, which were accompanied by a shrill and miserable scream, could be heard. At the same time, the huge amount of divine power dissipated quickly as well. The three-horned star demon's body had returned to normal. At that very moment, its hands were covering its enormous mouth, and it looked like it was in extreme pain. Time for me to stop playing with you. While staring at the three-horned star demon in front of him, Jian Wushuang raised his blood mountain sword high up in the air. At the moment when he raised his sword, an overbearing sword essence burst forth as well. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Crimson shadows gathered on the dark void hastily, and there was a total of 38 sword shadows. That's right, there were 38 shadows. Before Jian Wushuang made a breakthrough, he could only create 16 sword shadows when he used his full power. However, after he made a breakthrough, his level of comprehension of the power of Heavenway increased greatly. As such, the number of sword shadows that he could create increased to 38. For the 38 crimson sword shadows, every one of them was so powerful that it was suffocating and terrifying. However, at that very moment, the 38 crimson sword shadows were superimposed onto one another perfectly. Rumble! After the 38 crimson sword shadows fused, a huge sword shadow was formed. This huge sword shadow contained an earth-shaking amount of power, and it was extremely close to a stage 3-peak real god unique skill. Myriad waves kill. With a shrill cry from Jian Wushuang, he swung the long sword on his hands down straight away. At the same time, the new sword shadow, which was formed from the 38 crimson sword shadows, also attacked fiercely. At once, the universe shook and all living beings trembled in fear. The three-horned star demon was still in pain, and it had not regained its composure. However, at that very moment, it still managed to sense danger coming its way, and it raised its head. The moment it raised its head, the crimson blood shadow which could cover the whole sky enveloped him completely. Rumble, frightening power burst forth. It was as if the whole universe was welcoming the end of the world. The impact from the attack continued for 2 breaths of time before dissipating completely. Jian Wushuang's body turned vague, and he appeared at the center of the source of the power. There was a badly injured body over there, and it belonged to the three-horned star demon. However, no matter how badly injured the three-horned star demon's body was, the demon core in its body would still be undamaged. The demon core was extremely hard, as it was filled with a large amount of pure power. Even an Almighty's attack would not be able to destroy it. With a wave of Jian Wushuang's hand, a demon core, which was bigger in size than any other demon core, appeared in Jian Wushuang's hands. Moreover, the demon core was not only black in color, it was also mixed with green color. When Jian Wushuang swept his soul power past the demon core, he could sense a great amount of pure power from it. As expected, the pure power that a grade 3 demon core contains is incomparable to even tens of grade 1 demon cores. Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with delight. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang's expression changed, and he saw the 2 shadows which were approaching him from afar. Jian Wushuang frowned, and he put the grade 3 demon core into his Qiankuan ring immediately. Although Jian Wushuang's reaction was fast, the scene of him holding a grade 3 demon core was still seen by the 2 people who were rushing over. That's a grade 3 demon core. The black-robed, arrogant old man opened his eyes wide. Yes, it's indeed a grade 3 demon core. The plump, bald-headed young man was shocked. Grade 3 demon cores were rarely seen. At the very least, it was difficult to get them in the inner layer of the 8th lair. After all, there were so few 3-horned star demons in the inner layer to the point that it was pathetic, not mentioning the luck needed to come across a 3-horned star demon. Even if one were to come across a 3-horned star, a normal chaotic real god would be unable to kill it. Chapter 1656, 1656 Greedy. 1656 Greedy. For example, the black-robed, arrogant old man and the plump, bald-headed young man had already traveled many times in the inner layer of the 8th lair. Moreover, they also stayed in the inner layer for quite a long period of time for every trip. However, up till that moment, they had never obtained a grade 3 demon core before. However, at that moment, they saw a grade 3 demon core appearing in front of them, and it was being put into someone else's Qiankuan ring. Avoid real god. This person is the genius Jian Wushuang from the lineage of Star. The 2 of them recognized Jian Wushuang instantly. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 of them stopped at a short distance away from Jian Wushuang, and their eyes started to scan the surroundings. They could tell that an intense battle had just taken place at their location. Moreover, they also see the body of the 3-horned star demon, which was badly damaged. Could Jian Wushuang have killed that 3-horned star demon? The bald-headed young man frowned. He is the only person here. Hence, he must be one who killed it. However, we do not know how he managed to do it. The black-robed, arrogant old man was squinting his eyes. The 2 of them were a bit late, and they were unable to witness the scene of Jian Wushuang killing the 3-horned star demon. Thus, they questioned the method that Jian Wushuang had used to kill the 3-horned star demon. After all, while Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator with an extremely high level of comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei that was said to be able to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace, he was still a void real god in the end. Moreover, he was just a void real god who had just made a breakthrough recently. How could a void real god kill a 3-horned star demon that both of them were helpless against? Unless they saw it with their own eyes, they would not believe it, even if they died. A grade 3 demon core. The black-robed, arrogant old man was licking his lips. The higher the level of a demon core, the higher its cost. A grade 1 demon core is worth about 2 doctrine gems. However, a grade 2 demon core is worth about 11 to 12 doctrine gems. As for a grade 3 demon core, I have heard that someone had wanted to trade 100 doctrine gems for a grade 3 demon core. However, no one cared about him. After all, only idiots would use grade 3 demon cores to trade for doctrine gems. As grade 3 demon cores contain a great amount of pure power, if they were used to manufacture elixirs, the elixirs would definitely be able to recover a chaotic real god's divine power fully in a short amount of time. Hence, if the elixirs were used properly, it would be the same as having an extra life. However, it's a pity that the grade 3 demon core has landed in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The bald-headed young man shook his head. Xueling, have you realized that the space that we are in is completely cut off from the outside world? The black-robed, arrogant old man said abruptly. The bald-headed young man was stunned, and he tried to communicate with the outside world immediately. However, he realized that his message could not be sent out. I see. The bald-headed young man's eyes turned grave, and he looked toward the black-robed, arrogant old man at once. What are you trying to say? What do you think? Why did both of us decide to team up back then? The black-robed, arrogant old man laughed coldly. This Jian Wushuang has obtained a grade 3 demon core. Moreover, he is also the apple of the lineage of stars, as well as a top genius. Therefore, he is full of treasures. If we were to kill him, our gains. However, isn't he someone who is able to kill a 3-horned star demon? The bald-headed young man was a bit hesitant. Do you really think that a void real god can kill a 3-horned star demon? The black-robed, arrogant old man sneered. In any case, I don't believe it. Also, even if we are unable to kill him, we can just leave immediately. What can he do to us? You're right. The bald-headed young man nodded his head and made up his mind. Since that's the case, let's do it. I had been waiting for you to say that. The black-robed, arrogant old man's eyes became gloomy and cold. Their simple conversation only lasted for a short while. Moreover, they had set up a seal intentionally during their conversation. As such, Jian Wushuang did not know what they were talking about. Of course, Jian Wushuang realized that something was amiss from their actions. However, he was still not in a rush to leave. Real God Xueling and real God Guing of the Soaring Heaven King Palace. The two of them are normal chaotic real gods. Even if they were to team up, they would not be a threat to me. I really wish to see what the both of them plan to do. Jian Wushuang floating at his position quietly, and he had nothing to fear. At that moment, the black-robed, arrogant old man and the bald-headed young man finally finished their conversation. Their eyes then looked toward Jian Wushuang. Congratulations, Jian Wushuang. You have actually obtained a grade 3 demon core. The black-robed, arrogant old man, known as Real God Guing, laughed. His face was also filled with graciousness. I was just lucky. Jian Wushuang was neither haughty nor humble. What about the two of you? Even though both of you are chaotic real gods, both of you teamed up. Aren't both of you thinking too highly of the star demons in the inner layer? Both of us just happened to run into each other, and we will split up soon. Real God Guing laughed. He then said firmly straight away, Jian Wushuang, I have a presumptuous request, and I hope that you will agree to it. Tell me the request. Jian Wushuang's expression turned cold. I want the grade 3 demon core that you have, and I am willing to use 10 doctrine gems to exchange for it. Deal. Real God Guing said, while laughing. 10 doctrine gems? No problem. Jian Wushuang grinned. With a flip of his hands, the grade 3 demon core appeared on his hands. The demon core is here. Real God Guing, you may come over and take it. Without standing on ceremony, Real God Guing headed toward Jian Wushuang immediately. However, at the moment where he appeared in the void, less than 100 meters away from Jian Wushuang, swish, all of a sudden, a brilliant sword light appeared. The sword light was not just dazzling. Under the influence of the power of space-time, it pierced through the void and headed for Real God Guing's head. Humph, I knew that you would do this. Real God Guing was not surprised in the slightest. He then extended his big hands and grabbed the sword light with his strength. The void twisted open, and the sword light that Jian Wushuang unleashed exploded when it was crushed. Jian Wushuang could not help but retreat a few steps, and his laughter was filled with ridicule. If the both of you wish to snatch my grade 3 demon core away from me, just say it openly. There is no need to be so hypocritical. Hypocritical? Coldness and gloominess flashed past real God Gu Ying's eyes. Xueling, let's attack together and kill this little kid. All right, real God Xueling, who was at the back, nodded his head, and his powerful aura was unleashed instantly. At that moment, the two chaotic real gods revealed their strongest abilities right away. A giant, ancient black hammer could be seen appearing on real God Gu Ying's hands. Moreover, the black giant hammer also contained bits of Thunderbolt power. After real God Gu Ying gave a cry, the black giant hammer expanded instantly. Russell, the giant hammer, was accompanied by an infinite amount of Thunderbolt power, and it headed toward Jian Wushuang, as though a thunder god had descended. As for real God Xueling, he was holding a crimson long spear tightly. When he swung the long spear, a great amount of divine power appeared, and blood mist, which could cover the whole sky, spilled out instantly. The blood mist then gathered in the void and changed into crimson giant dragons after a short while. There was a total of 9 crimson giant dragons, and they attacked at the same time with shocking power. Chapter 1657, 1657 being killed instead. 1657 being killed instead. Jian Wushuang stood in the dark void. He was staring at the black giant hammer, which contained an infinite amount of Thunderbolt power, as well as the 9 crimson giant dragons, which were both aimed at him. He could feel the power that the two attacks were releasing clearly. Haha, 2 chaotic real gods have teamed up straight away and used their full power from the get-go. They really think highly of me. Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently. However, a vast amount of divine power containing ancient god power had already risen from his body. Jian Wushuang changed into a 100-foot-tall ancient god body, and there were 6 stars on the space between his eyebrows. Universal laws. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned imposing, and many ancient god shadows appeared behind him. Similarly, those ancient god shadows were extremely huge. They were standing behind Jian Wushuang, and there were hundreds of them. The shadows were all staring strongly. With a wave of Jian Wushuang's big hands, the ancient god shadows behind him also swung their palms at the same time. Rumble! Hundreds of palm prints attacked at the same time. When a palm print attacked alone, it was not very powerful. However, the key point was that there were many of them. In no time, the hundreds of palm prints clashed with the black giant hammer and the 9 crimson giant dragons. Bam, 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 bam. Fierce booming sounds shook the heavens, and real God Xueling, as well as real God Gu Ying, were completely swallowed up by the palm prints. The 9 crimson giant dragons that real God Xueling unleashed were dissipated by the attack, and real God Gu Ying's crimson giant hammer attack was repelled. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang, who was originally standing in his original position, dashed forward fiercely. Thousands upon thousands of shadows burst forth at the same time. Jian Wushuang's body was like a ghost, and he appeared behind real God Gu Ying in an instant. Real God Gu Ying's expression changed slightly, as he had already sensed Jian Wushuang's body behind him. Jian Wushuang's body was covered with a dark golden light, and he was emitting a great amount of power. With his left hand holding his sword, he raised his right hand slowly, and his index finger pointed toward real God Gu Ying from afar. When he stuck out his finger, the void collapsed straight away. An ancient pitch-black giant hand, which contained frightening power, appeared out of thin air and attacked real God Gu Ying fiercely. Although real God Gu Ying was a chaotic real god, he could not help but feel fearful at that moment. This power, real God Gu Ying gritted his teeth, and he raised his black giant hammer, which contained an infinite amount of Thunderbolt power, again. With a rustling sound, the Thunderbolt power shattered the void and everything else into pieces. It then changed into a Thunder God hammer and struck the approaching giant finger. Bam! A giant black hole appeared out of thin air. The black hole contained a great amount of Thunderbolt power, which was dancing in it, and it looked just like a thunder prison. However, in the thunder prison, a ray of black light was glowing even more brilliantly, and by going along real God Gu Ying's arm, it struck his body directly. Puff! Real God Gu Ying gave a groan, and his expression turned ghastly pale. Moreover, his body had also retreated quickly. It was only after a long time that he regained his posture. What a great power! Even though I unleashed my strongest move, I was still pushed back. Real God Gu Ying had already opened his eyes wide, and he was filled with fear. "Gu Ying, be careful!" a strict cry could be heard. What? Real God Gu Ying's expression changed greatly as he had already seen the ghost-like shadow which had appeared behind him at some point in time. Moreover, the shadow had already swung the long sword on his hands. With that, an icy cold sword light ripped open the void, mercilessly, and headed for his head. It was too close to him, and its speed was too fast. As such, real God Gu Ying did not have the ability to dodge the attack. Swish! Real God Gu Ying's head was sent flying. Before his consciousness dissipated completely, real God Gu Ying was still filled with disbelief. How can his speed be so fast? He did not know that Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the space-time doctrine had already cleared the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. On top of that, by unleashing his attack with chaotic real God-level divine power, he would be more powerful than many of the top chaotic real gods. Since real God Gu Ying did not know about this, Jian Wushuang naturally exceeded his expectations. In just an extremely short period of time, real God Gu Ying, who was filled with murderous intent and who had wanted to kill Jian Wushuang moments ago, was dead. Run! I have to run away quickly. Upon witnessing the death of real God Gu Ying, real God Xueling suppressed his fears and escaped immediately. He had always been far away from Jian Wushuang. Moreover, he was proficient in speed. On top of that, he reacted straight away by unleashing his secret skill to escape. As such, even Jian Wushuang was unable to give chase, and he could only look on as real God Xueling's body disappeared. Even though they are merely two normal chaotic real gods, they still dared to lay their hands on me. They are really quite gutsy. Jian Wushuang sneered, and he came beside real God Gu Ying's body immediately. With a wave of his hands, he destroyed real God Gu Ying's body. As for real God Gu Ying's treasures and Qian Kuan ring, they naturally landed in Jian Wushuang's hands. After Jian Wushuang scanned through real God Gu Ying's Qian Kuan ring, he became disappointed. Even though he is a chaotic real god, he only has these few items. Moreover, he has only obtained 6 demon cores, not to mention they are all grade 1 demon cores. Jian Wushuang was not interested in the treasures in real God Gu Ying's Qian Kuan ring. Although he was a normal chaotic real god, all his items amounted to 1 to 200 doctrine gems. However, Jian Wushuang was not too concerned with that. He was more concerned about the demon cores. It was obvious that 6 grade 1 demon cores were unable to satisfy him. However, it was still considered a gain. After getting real God Gu Ying's Qian Kuan ring by taking into account his demon cores and converting his demon spirits into demon cores, I currently have a total of 28 grade 1 demon cores, 2 grade 2 demon cores, and a grade 3 demon core. With this number of demon cores, I should be able to raise my ultimate divine power by quite a bit. Jian Wushuang could not help but clench his fists. Filled with excitement, Jian Wushuang left the battlefield immediately. In a split second, He opened up a simple cave on a dark mountain and started to absorb the pure power within the demon spirits as well as demon cores. From the vast void, real god Xueling had been escaping miserably. It was only after running for an hour's time and confirming that Jian Wushuang had stopped chasing him that he stopped. That Jian Wushuang has actually become so strong. Real god Xueling's eyes were still filled with shock. It should be known that when real god Guing and he had decided to lay their hands on Jian Wushuang, they had made nothing of him. They had seen the three-horned star demon that Jian Wushuang had killed. However, in their eyes, they felt that Jian Wushuang had used some special means such as the famous secret skill of Star Palace of the lineage of Star. In the end, Jian Wushuang was merely a void real god. However, in actual fact, that was obviously not the case. Chapter 1658, 1658, 3 Droplets. 1658, 3 Droplets. That Jian Wushuang has definitely killed a three-horned star demon, head-on. Real god Xueling was murmuring, real god Guing and I are genuine chaotic real gods. When we teamed up, both of us unleashed our full powers right off the bat. However, we were still easily suppressed by Jian Wushuang in the end. Moreover, real god Guing was killed on the spot. Jian Wushuang's abilities. A top chaotic real god. That's right. Jian Wushuang definitely has the fighting capabilities of a top chaotic real god. Moreover, he is also comparable to real god Ziyi of our soaring Heaven King Palace. But he is only a void real god. Real god Xueling's mind was filled with shock, and it was only after a long time that he calmed down. After that, he took out a transmission token and sent a message to the higher-ups of the soaring Heaven King Palace to inform them of the matter. The higher-ups of the soaring Heaven King Palace also replied quickly, "Humph, Jian Wushuang, I admit that you are an unbelievable genius. However, the experts of the soaring Heaven King Palace are not people who you can kill as and when you like." Real god Xueling's eyes were scarlet in color. Inside the cave that Jian Wushuang opened, he had been sitting down with his legs crossed, and he was absorbing the demon spirits and demon cores that he had obtained so far with great concentration. As Jian Wushuang absorbed them, he realized that the pure power within the demon spirits and demon cores was not as simple as he had expected. When he was absorbing the pure power previously, he had absorbed them forcefully, although there would not be any side effects in doing so. A considerable amount of pure power would be lost. However, at that very moment, as Jian Wushuang continued to absorb the pure power, he gradually found a new way to absorb the pure power. Although his new method of absorbing the pure power would take a longer period of time, he would not waste any pure power of the demon spirits and demon cores. Time passed by. In a flash, 1 year had passed. During the 1 year, Jian Wushuang had absorbed many of his demon spirits, as well as his grade 1 demon cores completely. With that, the ultimate divine power within his body had increased greatly as well. At that moment, there was a total of 2 ultimate divine power water droplets in his body. This meant that Jian Wushuang's divine power was twice as thick as before. I have finished absorbing all my grade 1 demon cores. Now it's time for the grade 2 demon cores. With a flip of his hands, Jian Wushuang took out 2 grade 2 demon cores. The amount of pure power that a grade 2 demon core contained was many times more than that of a grade 1 demon core. Jian Wushuang then began to absorb the pure power from the grade 2 demon cores. For the 2 grade 2 demon cores, it would require 6 months' time to absorb them both. After the 2 grade 2 demon cores were completely absorbed, half a year had passed. With that, the ultimate divine power in Jian Wushuang's body increased again. However, he was still a step away from forming the third ultimate divine power water droplet. Originally, I thought that the second and third ultimate divine power water droplet were the same as the first ultimate divine power water droplet. However, looking at it now, that is not the case. Comparing the level of thickness, the second ultimate divine power water droplet is stronger than the first water droplet. As for the third ultimate divine power water droplet, it is thicker than the second water droplet. Thus, it will require me to absorb more pure power, and it will be more difficult for me to form it, Jian Wushuang muttered. However, his eyes were looking at the final demon core on his hands. That demon core was the Grade 3 demon core. The Grade 3 demon core contains even more pure power, and I hope that it can help me to form the third ultimate divine power water droplet. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists tightly. After that, he started to absorb the pure power from within the Grade 3 demon core. Not only was it more difficult to absorb a Grade 3 demon core compared to a Grade 2 demon core, the time taken was also longer. Jian Wushuang took a total of 1 year and 4 months to complete the absorption of the pure power of the Grade 3 demon core. After the absorption was complete, the third ultimate divine power water droplet was finally formed in his body. There are 3 droplets now. When Jian Wushuang sensed the 3 ultimate divine power water droplets that were in his body, his eyes glowed brilliantly. It has only been a few years since I came to 8th Lair, and I have already managed to raise my abilities greatly by forming the third ultimate divine power water droplet. If I were to continue relying on the pure power within the demon cores, I would probably be able to form the 10th ultimate divine power water droplet in no time. At that time, I will be able to make a breakthrough to stage 2 ultimate real God. With that, my divine power and body will achieve the level of an almighty. Even though my comprehension of the heaven way is slightly lacking, I will still be able to run wild amidst the real gods with just my divine power and body. Read more chapter on novel full. While thinking about that, Jian Wushuang was extremely excited. To everyone else, although the 8th Lair was an opportunity, its effectiveness was limited. However, to Jian Wushuang, the 8th Lair was a great opportunity. The demon spirits and demon cores within the bodies of the star demons were extremely useful to him. I have finished absorbing the demon cores and demon spirits. Next, I have to continue searching for star demons to obtain new demon cores. Jian Wushuang stood up and left the cave straight away. At the void, as Jian Wushuang searched for the traces of the star demons, he also took out his transmission token to communicate with Hall Master Yuan at the same time. Back then, Hall Master Yuan had looked for Jian Wushuang when he was absorbing the demon cores after having secluded himself in the cave. After knowing that Jian Wushuang had secluded himself in the cave to absorb the power of the demon cores, Hall Master Yuan did not disturb him. It was only after Jian Wushuang had completed his absorption that he contacted him again. Jian Wushuang, I heard that you have killed real God Gu Ying of the Soaring Heaven King Palace while traveling in the inner layer of the 8th Lair. Hall Master Yuan's voice was filled with laughter. That's right, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. How impressive! You are able to kill a chaotic real god after such a short period of time. Hall Master Yuan was excited as well. It is because of the fact that he underestimated me that I was able to have my way. Jian Wushuang laughed. Of course, his words were modest. Real God Guing did not underestimate him, and he used his full power right off the bat. Moreover, he had also teamed up with real God Xueling. However, there was nothing that they could do as the gap between their abilities was too huge. Oh, right. With the death of real God Guing, the Soaring Heaven King Palace will definitely be infuriated. I wonder if they have created some trouble for the lineage of Star? Jian Wushuang questioned. Of course they did. The soaring Heaven King Palace even wanted the lineage of Star to hand you over so that they could execute you. Haha, that was really funny. Hall Master Yuan sneered. Oh right, what exactly happened during that battle? Real God Guing and real God Xueling had cast their greedy eyes on my grade 3 demon core. Thus, they took action straight away to kill me so that they could snatch it away from me. However, as their abilities were not strong enough, they were killed by me. It is just that simple. Jian Wushuang laughed. Even though 2 chaotic real gods had teamed up, one of them was still killed by you in the end. Hall Master Yuan managed to get a great piece of information from Jian Wushuang's words. After that, he laughed. I knew that you would not provoke the soaring Heaven King Palace for no reason. As expected. Back then, real God Xueling even said that you were the one who had cast your greedy eyes on real God Guying's treasure. Hence, you took the initiative to launch a surprise attack to kill real God Guing. How shameless they are! Chapter 1659, 1659 Real God Peng. 1659 Real God Peng. They are indeed shameless, Jian Wushuang sneered. It was real God Xueling and real God Guing who had cast their greedy eyes on his grade 3 demon core, and they had wanted to kill him for that. However, in the end, the soaring Heaven King Palace said that he was the one who had cast his eyes on their treasure. Thus, he had launched a surprise attack of his own accord and killed real God Guing as a result. Hall Master Yuan, how do you plan to reply the soaring Heaven King Palace? Jian Wushuang questioned. I shall reply the correct way. Hall Master Yuan said indifferently. By comparing abilities, the soaring Heaven King Palace is indeed slightly more powerful than the lineage of Star. However, they are not a lot more powerful than us. Even if we were to fight, the lineage of Star would not be afraid of the soaring Heaven King Palace. Moreover, the soaring Heaven King Palace is not daring enough to shed all pretenses of cordiality with the lineage of Star completely. However, although the soaring Heaven King Palace cannot do anything to the lineage of Star, they can still think of ways to deal with you. For example, they can send experts to the 8th lair or get the experts in the 8th lair to kill you. From what I know, there are currently 4 experts of the soaring Heaven King Palace traveling in the 8th lair, apart from one of them who is in the outer layer as he is an eternal real god. The 3 remaining people are all chaotic real gods. Moreover, among the 3 chaotic real gods, the person who you have to be careful of is real God Ziyi. That real God Ziyi is an expert who stands at the top of the chaotic real gods and is also extremely near to the real god ranking list. He has also been traveling in the core region of the 8th lair all the while. Hence, if he were to come across you, he would definitely kill you without hesitation. Real God Ziyi? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. He had also heard of real God Ziyi before. Jian Wushuang, for this period of time, I will get someone to observe the movements of the soaring Heaven King Palace's experts. If the soaring Heaven King Palace sends experts to the 8th lair, I will inform you immediately. Also, please be extra careful in the 8th lair, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and cut off the transmission to Hall Master Yuan immediately. After that, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. That real God Ziyi has been traveling in the core region of the 8th lair throughout the years, and it just so happens that I have decided to go to the core region as well. Normally, normal chaotic real gods would travel in the inner layer of the 8th lair. With Jian Wushuang's abilities, he could definitely travel in the core region. By going to the core region, there would be more opportunities for him to obtain demon cores. However, it would naturally be more dangerous as well. I hope that I would be able to meet him at that time. I really wish to see whether real God Ziyi has the ability to make me use my full power. Jian Wushuang laughed. From the time that he made a breakthrough to a real god to the current moment, he had been training to raise his own abilities. Even though he had fought against someone else in the Thunderbolt Island, it was merely a duel. Previously, when he had fought against real god Xueling and real god Guing, as they were merely two normal chaotic real gods, they had no right to make him use his full power. In other words, up until that moment, he had never used his full power to fight with someone else before. Jian Wushuang headed to the core region. If he were to come across star demons along the way, he would kill them. In less than half a year's time, Jian Wushuang entered the core region of the 8th lair. The core region was the core of the 8th level. It was the place with the most number of star demons, and also the place with the most powerful star demons. Just like before, the core region was also in complete darkness, and no shard of light could be seen at all. In the void, Jian Wushuang was traveling forward slowly. He had already spread his soul power across the surrounding, so that he could pay attention to a large radius from him. His soul power covered a huge range, and it would naturally be easier for him to find star demons. This was a great advantage that Jian Wushuang had over the chaotic real gods. By searching like that, Jian Wushuang found traces of star demons in no time. Tens of star demons were gathered together. Moreover, what had caused Jian Wushuang to be elated was that there was a greater proportion of mature star demons among them. For example, in the inner layer and outer layer, it was considered not too bad for there to be one mature star demon among tens of star demons, and the proportion was 1 to 10. However, for the core region, on average, there would be one mature star demon for every 10 star demons. At that very moment, there was a total of 6 mature, one-horned star demons among the tens of star demons that Jian Wushuang was facing. Time to kill them. Jian Wushuang's body floated toward the group of star demons immediately. For the next period of time, Jian Wushuang continued to hunt and kill star demons while traveling in the core region. Even with his abilities, he still needed to be careful in the core region. As long as he did not come across places that were extremely concentrated with star demons, it would not be too dangerous. With that, as he hunted star demons, the number of demon cores in his Qiankuan ring would naturally increase. In a flash, 2 years passed by. Boom! With a fierce booming sound, the black, vast void was completely torn open during the battle. Frightening sword essence was sweeping across the area. While the sword essence was sweeping across the area, a shrill and horrible shriek could be heard. After a long time, the battle came to an end. Jian Wushuang appeared on the ground, and he was looking at the body of the star demon in front of him. The star demon had 3 horns on its forehead, and it was a grade 3 star demon. However, this grade 3 star demon was different from the grade 3 star demon that Jian Wushuang had killed previously. This grade 3 star demon's body was completely black in color, and its skin did not have any parts that were green in color. In terms of abilities, it was also slightly weaker than the previous grade 3 star demon. There are extremely few grade 3 star demons in the inner layer. Back then, my luck was good, and I managed to come across one. However, in the core region, as long as I look diligently, I will be able to find them easily. As Jian Wushuang laughed, he waved his hands and kept the grade 3 star demon's demon core into his Qiankuan ring. However, at that very moment, Jian Wushuang looked toward the void beside him at once. Someone has come. What a coincidence. It was indeed a coincidence. When he had killed the three-horned star demon previously, he had chanced upon real god Xueling and real god Guing. At that very moment, when he had killed his second-grade three-star demon, he had chanced upon another human cultivator. I hope that the person who comes this time around will not be the same as the two people from the Soaring Heaven King Palace, Jian Wushuang muttered. In no time, the person appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. It was a chubby old man. He had a stalwart body, and he was close to 250 centimeters tall. When he stood in his position, he looked like a small mountain. "You are real God Peng Hua?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Ha. The person in front of me should be the famous inverse cultivator, Jian Wushuang." The chubby old man laughed. His voice was gentle and charming. "I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings to real God Peng Hua." Jian Wushuang greeted him with a modest expression. Jian Wushuang knew about real God Peng Hua. He was a member of the Sanctuary Alliance, but he was not in any powerhouses. Instead, he was an expert who traveled alone, and he was extremely powerful. It was rumored that real God Peng Hua had fought with an expert of the real God ranking list before. Moreover, he was never at a disadvantage during the fight. Although it was unknown whether the rumor was true, there had to be a reason for the rumor to exist. Hence, this indicated how powerful real God Peng Hua was.